Chapter 1639. 10 years, we welcome the Spirit King. With Xueqi in the lead, all the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints hurried to the tunnel between the two worlds as quickly as possible. They bowed towards the Spirit King politely. They had arrived rather quickly. Less than 5 seconds after the Spirit King had emerged from the tunnel, they had arrived from tens of millions of kilometers away. The Spirit King was indifferent. He glanced around before looking towards the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce space, stabbing through the atmosphere as a sharp sword to look at the blood-red cloud that hovered in outer space silently. He frowned slightly. "Jian Chen, you still haven't emerged," the Spirit King murmured. His voice was rather deep. Then he looked towards Xueqi and asked emotionlessly, "Xueqi, how have the 10 years of negotiations gone?" Xueqi became bitter. "Spirit King, the people of this world continuously insisted on giving us a tiny part of their land, nowhere near the amount that we need. Coupled with the fact that Jian Chen's right over our heads and Shangguan Mu'er's on Three Saint Island, we've been fearful in the negotiations without your support. It was impossible for us to make a big deal against the people of this world, so we've made no actual progress in the past decade. If that's the case, let me go talk with the people of this world," the Spirit King said emotionlessly and slightly coldly. At this moment, the nearby space trembled slightly. All the Origin Realm experts of this world appeared at the same time. They faced the Spirit King very sternly. They all clasped their hands towards him after appearing. They had no choice but to come. At the very least, the region was desolate. It was better than the Spirit King personally visiting Flame City. "You've come at the perfect time. The negotiations that haven't progressed for 10 years can end today. Xueqi, show them the plans you've drawn up," said the Spirit King. "Yes, Spirit King," Xueqi replied courteously before tossing a paper scroll towards the Origin Realm experts from this world. "You big baddie," Xiao Ling stared at the Spirit King viciously as she murmured to herself. Even though the Spirit King had once fought alongside the people of this world to avert the crisis of the world, Xiao Ling still could not forget about the great demonic figure he had projected onto the barrier when he attacked the seal beneath Mercenary City. That sight had left her quite terrified back then. Xueqi's paper plan hovered quietly before the Origin Realm experts. They all revealed ugly expressions, and none of them reached for the scroll. "Spirit King, there's no need to be so urgent with this matter. Why don't we discuss it after Jian Chen returns?" At this moment, a beautiful voice rang out. Shangguan Mu'er had hurried over from Three Saint Island as well. She carried her simple zither as she stood in the air sternly. "I would naturally discuss with Jian Chen if he was present. Since he's in seclusion, the matter of territory can be decided by you people. It's the same for me to be discussing with you," said the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts that belonged to the 4 races showed rather ugly expressions. They did not possess the power to discuss anything with the Spirit King, let alone protect their own interests. The strong preying on the weak was the law of survival. If the Spirit King planned on going to war against them and acted mercilessly, the Spirit King could personally kill them if they displeased him during the negotiations. After all, the only person who could stand on level ground with the Spirit King was not present. If the Spirit King really wished to lay his hands on them, there would only be death. Even Shangguan Mu'er would not be able to avoid that fate. Just as the Origin Realm experts that belonged to the 4 races had no idea what to do, a voice suddenly rang out from outer space. "Shen Jian, why don't you wait for me to emerge from seclusion before settling the matter of territory? Your world has been in the same situation for countless years, so is there really a need to hurry?" "Jian Chen. It's Jian Chen." This is Jian Chen's voice. Jian Chen has finally spoken. He still cares about the Tian Yuan continent. As Jian Chen's voice rang out, all the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races beamed with joy. They became relieved as well. Unknowingly, Jian Chen seemed to have become the person they depended on for support, as well as the source of their confidence. Jian Chen had even become the person they relied on in the face of the Spirit King. The Spirit King looked towards outer space, and his eyes shone. He said emotionlessly, "Jian Chen, if you remain in seclusion for 1,000 years, do we have to wait that long as well? Have you gone into seclusion now so that you can have greater bargaining chips in future negotiations? It won't be as long as 1,000 years. I'll emerge in a decade at most. Shen Jian, I understand you, and you understand me as well. No matter how powerful I become, it won't affect the outcome of the negotiations. It's all because of your people that we were able to stop the crisis of the world this time. Their courageous sacrifice has earned my admiration, and I will assist them in completing their final wishes so that they can rest easy. This is my oath to you, as well as the oath to all your people who had laid down their lives bravely." A gleam of light flickered through the Spirit King's eyes. He said, "Considering that we know each other, I'll wait for another decade. I will come again after that time." With that, the Spirit King returned to the world of Forsaken Saints with his Origin Realm experts. When he mentioned that they knew each other, no one present understood the implications. Its meaning was so deep that only he and Jian Chen could understand. The Origin Realm experts from the 4 races all let out a deep breath of relief when they saw the Spirit King lead his people back to the world of Forsaken Saints. They had completely calmed down. They felt like they were about to suffocate when they faced the Spirit King earlier. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had already passed since Jian Chen and the Spirit King's 10-year agreement. It had been 18 years since Jian Chen had entered seclusion. 18 years was quite a long time for ordinary people. It was enough for an infant to grow up into an adult, but to sainthood and Origin Realm experts with lengthy lives, 18 years was only a brief period of cultivation. Even though the blood-red cloud in outer space was still present, it had shrunken at an extremely rapid rate. It was less than a tenth of its previous size. The pulses of power from the cloud was extremely weak now. Jian Chen cultivated within the cloud. His chaotic Niden had reached its limit after 18 years of absorbing the terrifying power of the cloud. He had reached the limits of the 8th layer of the chaotic body. At this moment, Jian Chen's body jerked suddenly. As he refined the last strand of pure power from the cloud, his chaotic Niden finally surpassed its limits and shattered loudly. Chapter 1640. The 9th layer of the chaotic body. Jian Chen suffered the pain of refining his body once again. It was the same experience, the same agony. This was the 9th time he had undergone this. From the 8 times before, he had accumulated plenty of experience already, so it was all smooth sailing for Jian Chen this time. It was as easy as cake for him. As Jian Chen's chaotic force gradually strengthened, he emitted a tremendous presence. It caused the entire blood-red cloud to churn wildly. At the same time, the presence expanded beyond the cloud, permeating the surrounding space. It squashed on the surrounding space, causing it to distort while the stars glimmered. The space a few dozen meters away from Jian Chen had even cracked. Jian Chen's presence caused all these cracks. His presence was so tremendous that it had surpassed early reciprocity long ago. It had surpassed mid-reciprocity, and even the presence of a late reciprocity expert would struggle to rival with it. It had surpassed the limits of the world long ago, yet his presence continued to climb. The disturbance Jian Chen caused in outer space obviously could not escape the senses of the Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent. At that moment, all of them raised their heads at the same time and looked towards outer space, towards the location of the blood-red cloud. What a terrifying presence! Has Jian Chen broken through again after 18 years of seclusion? Tai Ta sighed in amazement as he cultivated in the War God Hall. With a flash, he disappeared from within the Divine Hall. Gue Hai Yi Dao, Yang Lai, and Feng Xiaotian had gathered together on the Tianyuan continent. Gue Hai Yi Dao stared at outer space with mixed feelings and said, Jian Chen's strength was already extremely great, enough to fight the Spirit King who was akin to godhood. Now that he has actually broken through again, I really do wonder what shocking level his strength will reach. What terrifying talent, Feng Xiaotian murmured. He too smiled. He has actually broken through again. My great-grandson sure is outstanding. I just hope that he won't suffer any backlashes from increasing his strength so quickly in the past few years, making his foundation unstable. Yang Lai chuckled aloud. He was filled with pride, but at the same time, there was some worry. Jian Chen's strength had increased just too quickly. Even Yang Lai, someone who had lived for countless years and had seen many things, found it rather difficult to accept it. Great! Big Brother has become stronger again. Big Brother doesn't have to be scared of that baddie at all now. That baddie is no longer Big Brother's opponent. Xiao Ling clapped her hands and jumped around as she called out loudly. She was extremely excited. At the same time, Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling smiled happily in Flame City. All the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races appeared 100 meters away from the blood-red cloud. Now that the agreed 10 years were coming to a close, Jian Chen's breakthrough held a whole different level of significance for the negotiations. All the Origin Realm experts hovered in the distance and did not approach the blood-red cloud. They quietly waited for Jian Chen to emerge. They knew that Jian Chen would emerge soon. A few days later, Jian Chen's presence slowly subsided within the blood-red cloud. He gradually returned to peace, and the fist-sized chaotic Niden in his dantian had returned to the size of a soybean. It had shrunken, but it clearly contained a chaotic force on a whole different level compared to the 8th layer. Jian Chen smiled. Originally, he believed that reaching the 8th layer of the chaotic body was the limit for him in this world, but he had never expected the evil spirit to leave behind such a great fortune to him after the crisis of the world was averted, allowing his chaotic body to progress to the 9th layer. This was quite the pleasant surprise. However, Jian Chen's face changed at that moment. In the next moment, a presence filled with brutality suddenly began to radiate from him. This presence was also filled with destruction and evilness. His eyes had turned red at that moment, and even his hair rapidly reddened, causing Jian Chen to become filled with evilness. He seemed like a fiend. Jian Chen felt his consciousness become blurry. There was only an endless desire for slaughter and destruction left in his heart. Now, he seemed to have become an existence that only knew slaughter and destruction, no longer fearing anything. He would kill anything that got in his way, without any feelings or reluctance. Crack! With an inaudible sound, Jian Chen's soybean seed-sized chaotic Niden suddenly cracked open. An intense pain accompanied the crack. The pain made Jian Chen quiver, jerking him back to consciousness. The redness in his eyes gradually faded away, and his hair that had almost reddened completely turned back to its original black color as well. Even though Jian Chen's transformation had lasted for less than a split second, all the Origin Realm experts who were waiting outside still managed to sense his corrupt presence. What is this presence? Does the core of the crisis still remain? The sea goddess said sternly. All the people gathered there became extremely grim. Did something go wrong during Jian Chen's cultivation? Feng Xiaotian said gruffly. Everyone's face changed when they heard him. Even though they were suspicious, none of them dared to enter the blood-red cloud to check. They were not as powerful as Jian Chen or the Spirit King, so even though the cloud had weakened now, it still posed a certain degree of threat towards them. Most importantly, Jian Chen was still in there. They were afraid that they would affect Jian Chen if they just barged in. Jian Chen became grim in the blood-red cloud. He had also sensed the changes earlier. Coupled with the crack that had appeared on his chaotic Niden, all of these factors pointed to the fact that something had gone wrong after he broke through to the 9th layer. Jian Chen looked at the blood-red cloud and said grimly, "Looks like absorbing the power of the crisis isn't that easy. After all, the crisis of the world is a special existence that even the laws of the world can do nothing about. Even if I cultivate the chaotic body, it'll still bring me trouble because the crisis of the world is more powerful than the current me. There shouldn't have been any problems if I was far more powerful the crisis. I would have been able to refine it easily. But I need to understand just what hidden problems it might cause right now, and I need to come up with ways of handling them." Jian Chen immediately checked through his body. Although his chaotic Niden had cracked open, he did not pay too much attention to it. The chaotic Niden's imperfection would affect the strength he could display, limiting him to only 80% of his power, but even just the 80% was greater than what he possessed with the 8th layer of the chaotic body. When he truly cared about were the changes to his consciousness earlier. That was what he feared. Once he lost control of himself and sank into a state that only knew destruction and slaughter, the outcome would be unthinkable. After all, there was no longer anyone in the world who could stop him. Chapter 1641. Hidden Problems. Jian Chen carefully checked through his body several times and missed no corner. In the end, he finally discovered something different with his soul. A red speck of light had appeared in his soul. The blood-red light was very dim, but it had already silently fused into his soul, making it impossible for him to remove it. It would have been exceedingly difficult for him to discover it if he did not look closely. Jian Chen did not feel any sense of threat from the red light. It had fused with his soul silently, without raising his attention at all. It did not bring him any discomfort either. "Looks like you're the troublemaker." A cold light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes, and his face became extremely sunken. When he recalled all the moments of his 18 years of secluded cultivation, he understood very soon that he did not completely refine the evil presence within the blood's power. Although the power turned into chaotic force in the end, the evil presence that he had not completely refined entered his soul silently. This speck of light red filled with negative emotions shouldn't have been enough for my chaotic Niden to crack, even though it can influence my mind at certain times. Looks like there are some other flaws in my chaotic Niden. In the end, it's all because my strength is too weak. If my chaotic body was at the 9th layer or even the 10th layer when I refined the cloud, I probably wouldn't have come across these problems, Jian Chen thought. A smear of determination appeared in his eyes, and with a thought, the 2 broken strands of primordial god silk appeared from his wrist. I need to deal with the hidden problems in my soul immediately, or there'll be unthinkable consequences if my consciousness becomes affected in the future. The red light in my soul originated from the power of the crisis, so the power of the primordial god silk would be the most effective in destroying it, thought Jian Chen. With a thought, the 2 broken strands turned into a golden streak of light and disappeared into his forehead, entering his sea of consciousness. He had not refined the primordial god silk in the past, which was why Jian Chen could only store it in his space ring for so long. However, now that he had refined the primordial god silk while it was fending off the crisis of the world, not only could he hide the primordial god silk in his body now, he could even send it into his sea of consciousness easily. Although the primordial god silk had basically run out of power, there was still a tiny sliver of it left. This time, Jian Chen used the last sliver without any hesitation at all in an attempt to destroy the red speck of light that had infiltrated his soul. Fortunately, the primordial god silk was completely under his control now, and its power had no offensive capabilities unless it was facing the crisis of the world. As a result, Jian Chen did not worry at all that its power would harm his soul. But very soon, Jian Chen's heart sank even more. He discovered that the primordial god silk completely failed to remove the speck of red light in his soul. It did not seem to pose any harm to it at all. Damn. This speck of red light comes from the power the crisis used, but during my refinement process, it has changed. This change has allowed it to become immune to the primordial god silk. The primordial god silk no longer poses any threat to it now. Jian Chen's face became extremely sunken. His happiness and joy from breaking through to the 9th layer had completely vanished. He just could not imagine what would happen if he lost himself and began to massacre on the Tianyuan continent. Jian Chen could not help but shiver, frightened to the point where he became covered in cold sweat. This time, he felt chills run down his spine as his entire soul tremored in fright. At the same time, the familiar faces of Shangguan Mu'er, Shangguan Aojin, Yu Yu, Huang Wan, Chongyang Ba, Bai Yuntian, Chong Wuji, Du Gufeng, Qin Shao, and so on all flashed through his head, causing him to become even paler. Not only were his wives and son on the Tianyuan continent, but there were also his parents and many friends who had gone through thick and thin with him. Jian Chen did not leave the blood-red cloud. In the blink of an eye, he had stayed there for 3 days. He had come up with many ideas and tried them all during those 3 days, but he was still unable to do anything to the speck of red light in his soul because it had already fused with his soul. It had become a part of him, making it extremely difficult for him to remove it. Having run out of options, Jian Chen could only awaken the sword spirits who had been slumbering for 18 years. Master, if we recover, we can remove the hidden problem in your soul without any difficulty. But there's nothing we can do either right now, Ziying said helplessly. Master, there's no need to be so heavy-hearted. As long as you don't experience stimulation that is too great and manage to keep your consciousness clear, there's no need to worry so much about the light affecting your mind. And before you find a way to deal with the problem of your soul, Ziying and I can take turns watching over Master. Once Master's mind shows signs of being affected, we can awaken Master in time, said Qing Suo. As Jian Chen's strength progressed, Ziying and Qing Suo, who had not recovered their strength, could only provide minimal assistance to him. As a result, the sword spirits had fallen silent after destroying the crisis of the world, akin to going into seclusion to recover their strength. Jian Chen sighed gently. That's all we can do for now. Looks like I can only find a way to deal with the problems of my soul after I go to the saint's world. I'll need to do that as well if I want my chaotic body to progress to higher layers. As for the chaotic Niden, it's the source of my power, so it's not as fragile as my soul. Fixing it shouldn't be difficult. It'll just require a large amount of energy. Even if there's something that hasn't been refined in my chaotic Niden, it'll be slowly destroyed as my chaotic force progresses. It'll only affect the strength that I can assert. Jian Chen emerged from the blood-red cloud that he had remained in for 18 years. When he saw the glimmering stars, he had completely calmed down as if nothing bothered him anymore. Big brother, you finally emerged. Xiao Ling cried out excitedly when Jian Chen appeared before all the Origin Realm experts. She directly lunged into his bosom. Jian Chen held Xiao Ling by the shoulders gently with a smile. Affection poured from his eyes without any restraint. Even though Xiao Ling had lived for over 1,000,000 years, he still treated her as his own younger sister. When he was still weak, Xiao Ling had assisted him in overcoming problems many times, saving his life. Now that his strength had reached the apex of the world, it was up to him to protect Xiao Ling. Jian Chen, have you broken through again? And what was that extremely brutal presence that we suddenly felt 3 days ago? The sea goddess asked in concern. She immediately became stern towards the end. Shangguan Mu'er, Yang Lai, Gue Hai Yi Dao, Feng Xiaotian, Tai Ta, the four brothers, and so on all looked at Jian Chen with interest. Jian Chen was the pillar of support for their world. He was the only person who could rival the Spirit King in power. Whether his strength had increased again weighed on their minds because the stronger Jian Chen was, the more confidence they would have when facing the world of forsaken saints. However, if Jian Chen's strength had somehow declined and was no longer as great as the Spirit King, they would suffer from an extreme disadvantage in the upcoming negotiations. If the two worlds began fighting once again, it would be extremely likely that they would suffer defeat. Thank you for your concern. After 18 years of cultivation, my strength has indeed progressed to a new level. The Spirit King should no longer be my opponent with my current strength, unless he has truly reached godhood with his cultivation, Jian Chen said indifferently. Although his chaotic Niden had cracked, limiting him to only 80% of his full strength, it was still greater than what he could display with the 8th layer of the chaotic body. Most importantly, reaching the 9th layer did not just mean his chaotic force had strengthened. His chaotic body had become greater as well. Jian Chen estimated that the 9th layer of the chaotic body had exceeded late reciprocity and reached godhood. A chaotic body at godhood was simply unbelievable. That would mean nothing below godhood could even injure him, even if he just stood there. Although the Spirit King's battle prowess had reached godhood and could harm him, it would only give him some light scratches. Everyone became settled when they heard Jian Chen's words. They smiled at ease. Jian Chen looked at Shangguan Mu'er and took a step out, arriving before her. Looking at her beautiful face, Jian Chen said with self-blame, "Has Aojin been well in these years?" Shangguan Mu'er looked at Jian Chen, and her gaze wavered. She said calmly, "Aojin has been very well. He just misses you. When are you going to see him?" With that, Shangguan Mu'er turned around and left, returning to Three Saint Island. The sea goddess, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gue Hai Yi Dao all glanced past Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er. They seemed to smile. Although Shangguan Aojian's true identity had never been publicly announced, they had already discovered the truth through some traces. The sea goddess was the first one to find out. Xiao Ling arrived beside Jian Chen and asked in interest, "Brother, who is Aojian? Is it the young island master from Three Saint Island? He has so many violet cloud peaches. Did you give them all to him?" "You're so unfair, big brother," Xiao Ling pouted unhappily. Chapter 1642. Changes. The Chongyang clan in Lore City had already become the most famous clan in the world long ago. Even the people on the Beast God continent, Sea Realm, and Wasteland continent knew about it. Even many people from the world of Forsaken Saints had heard about it. This was all because the status of the Chongyang clan in their world was akin to the sacred spirit hall in the world of Forsaken Saints. It represented the greatest in the world, making it the center of attention because it was sovereign Jian Chen's home. Even when the current clan was not particularly large, and its strength was not particularly great, it was a clan that would dominate in the world as long as Jian Chen was present. There were even countless cultivators on the Tian Yuan continent who would take pride in being a simple servant or guard for the clan, because even a simple maid in the clan would possess extremely great status outside. There would rarely be anyone who would dare to offend them. With the Chongyang clan's current prestige and strength, as well as Jian Chen's support, expansion was a piece of cake. They would not face any obstructions at all, but since Jian Chen had once made a request regarding this aspect, they had not expanded even with their extraordinary strength and influence. They remained within Lore City, dwelling on a piece of land that would be considered as tiny by many large clans and organizations. There was a symbolic structure in the clan. It seemed like a palace from the outside, well decorated and grand. Although its size could not be compared to those imperial palaces of empires or countries, its grandeur was far greater. There was a head-sized gem on the top of the palace that absorbed the light of the sun and the moon so that it could glow with a gentle but dazzling shine. The light would envelop the entire clan whether it was day or night. The palace was a holy structure in the eyes of everyone in the clan, as well as the most consecrated place in the entire clan. This was all because it was where Jian Chen stayed. Yang Lai, Bai Yuntian, and Chongyang Ba had ordered its construction without Jian Chen's input. Only a place like that suited Jian Chen's current status in their eyes. A large number of golden-armored guards stood around the palace solemnly. Uncontainable pride filled all their faces as if they were all proud to be guarding this place. However, the door to the residence was closed most of the time and would only be opened when it was time to clean the palace. No one was allowed to enter it under ordinary circumstances, and even the current patriarch, Xueqi, was not allowed to enter. At this moment, a young man silently stood within the tightly shut palace. He sighed emotionally as he looked around. There were 2 swords, one violet and one azure, on his back. As expected, he was the owner of the residence, Jian Chen. I haven't come back in so many years. I had never expected that even my home would become so unfamiliar. It's quite hard to see the familiar structures from before, Jian Chen sighed emotionally as he stood there. He could not help but reminisce the past at the sight of this unfamiliar home. His home was still his home, except the changes were so vast that the familiar landscape only existed in his memories now. However, Jian Chen did not care too much about the changes. He knew that it was all the plans of his parents, except he wished that he could see the familiar home from before. He wanted to see it again so that he would remember it better as his time here was running out. Today just happened to be a day when the residence was cleaned. Several dozen female servants in luxurious robes walked over. After the guards inspected them, they carefully pushed open the door and entered with much respect. Both the guards and the cleaners took extremely great pride in serving the Chongyang clan. As a result, the female servants were dressed rather differently to regular female servants. Every single one of them wore the same uniform made from high-quality silk and satin. They were priceless. Ah, there's someone in here. The female servants, who were just about to start cleaning, suddenly called out. All their eyes widened as they stared at Jian Chen from 30 meters away. They had cleaned the residence for several years now, and some of the older servants had even cleaned this place for over a decade long. The residence had always been empty to them. No one else would ever enter it aside from during the cleaning process, and even the current patriarch of the clan did not possess the right to enter. They immediately became shocked when they suddenly found a person in the residence that was supposed to be empty. What? There's someone in there? The guards immediately heard their cries, and their expressions changed instantly. They had stood guard there the entire time. Aside from the female servants who had come to clean, they had not seen anyone else enter the divine hall. The guards immediately thought that someone had secretly snuck in when they heard that there was actually someone in the residence. Without any orders, they all began to radiate with powerful killing intent. They charged into the divine hall aggressively. This location was where their human sovereign resided, so apart from Jian Chen's wives and parents, no one had the right to set foot in there. Even if the current patriarch would suffer a punishment if he entered, so how could they afford to allow outsiders to blaspheme the place? Although they too were not allowed to enter the residence as guards, there were always exceptions. They had the power to enter the divine hall and arrest any intruders. The security within the Chongyang clan was so tight that even flies could be caught. Many sainthood cultivators hid in the dark apart from the guards. They would pay attention to any movements in the Chongyang clan at all times. The hidden cultivators immediately sensed the abnormal movements of the guards, so figures instantly flashed through the clan as several dozen of them were mobilized at the same time. They shot towards the residence as blurs. Some of them could even traverse several thousand meters with each step, appearing outside the residence as if they had teleported. In less than a second, several dozen sainthood experts had surrounded the residence. Most of them were saint rulers, with a few saint kings. There were 2 saint emperors among them as well, but without any exception, not a single one of them took a step into the residence. Chapter 1643. Brotherhood. More than a dozen sainthood experts had completely surrounded the residence long ago. Although they did not enter the residence, it would be almost impossible for the intruder in the residence to charge past them, even if they were a saint emperor. The guards for the residence surged into the structure like a flood as every single one of them radiated with killing intent. At the same time, 5 shocking presences appeared from the surroundings of the Chongyang clan. In the previous moment, the 5 presences had only appeared, yet in the next, the people who possessed the presences had already appeared before the residence silently. The 5 of them were all saint emperors and were on a completely different level compared to the 2 saint emperors among the group of sainthood experts. The 5 saint emperors clearly possessed an extraordinary status in the Chongyang clan. All the sainthood experts present clasped their hands politely when these 5 appeared. Even the 2 saint emperors who were a part of the crowd clasped their fists towards the 5 saint emperors. However, the 5 saint emperors completely ignored the actions, including the actions of the 2 other saint emperors. They were cold and expressionless, and their sharp gazes locked onto the residents. They were already secretly prepared to let out a lightning-swift attack at any time. In the eyes of all the people in the clan, the residence was a holy shrine that could not be blasphemed. This was even more so the case for the 5 of them. It had reached a point where, from a certain point of view, this place was even more important than their lives. This was because the 5 of them only possessed their current achievements due to the owner of the residence. It was the owner who had allowed them to go from mercenaries with limited potential to their current level of cultivation. The 5 of them were a part of the divine guards of the flame that Bai Lian had left at the Chongyang clan. Jian Chen had poured his heart out to raise every single member of the divine guards of the flame. He had used a large number of heavenly resources to change their talent, allowing them to go from people with limited potential to geniuses, so their cultivation speed had increased drastically. Coupled with the fact that the crisis of the world had been averted and the Yin-Yang Saint Rock no longer existed, the laws of the world had gradually reached perfection and origin energy began to appear once again. All these factors made it much easier for cultivators to cultivate in general, as well as easier to break through compared to before. The 5 members of the Divine Guards of the Flame were obviously Saint Kings who had successfully broken through to Saint Emperor. The female servants huddled into a group in one corner as they secretly looked at Jian Chen's back fearfully. Every single one of them felt extremely curious. Just who was so bold, daring to intrude on this residence? Even if 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Emperors intruded on this place, they would not be able to escape. There were no experts in the Chongyang clan who could stop 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Emperors, but there were such experts in Flame City. If the Chongyang clan truly required their assistance, the Origin Realm experts in Flame City could appear here at any time. This was because during Jian Chen's seclusion, the immature Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling would often go there to play. As time went on, basically everyone in the Chongyang clan learnt the identity of the 2. Jian Chen remained where he was like a statue. He continued to reminisce the past, paying no attention to the surroundings. Very soon, the group of guards surrounded him. The captain of the guards arrived before Jian Chen and bellowed with a glare. "Sir, you," his voice came to a sudden stop. In the next moment, his face changed drastically. His eyes widened dramatically as disbelief and shock filled his face. Plop! The captain of the guards immediately dispersed his presence, and he became courteous. He directly dropped to his knees and buried his head deep into the ground. He said fearfully, "This one greets the 4th young master. This one did not know that the 4th young master has returned. Please punish this one." The other guards all became stunned when they heard their captain's words, but they all kneeled at the same time soon afterwards. They said politely, "This one greets the 4th young master." "What 4th young master?" The frightened female servants in the corner all widened their eyes and stared at the unfamiliar figure. Their gazes were filled with disbelief. 4th young master. The voices of the guards echoed out and immediately caused the several dozen sainthood experts to become stunned. Many people found the moniker to be rather foreign. However, they all realized soon enough. All their faces changed in that moment, and the 5 people from the Divine Guards of the Flame all became overjoyed. The 4th young master has returned. The person in the residence is actually 4th young master. Quick, quick, tell the old patriarch and the old madam. The 4th young master has returned. Immediately, a sainthood expert cried out. At that moment, his face had become flushed from his excitement. The 4th young master of the Chongyang clan was the greatest sovereign from their world, no weaker than the Spirit King. Every single sainthood expert present felt glorious to be able to stand so close to him. "Xiang'er, has Xiang'er returned?" Before the message could be passed on, a vigorous voice rang out. An uncontainable excitement filled the voice. Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian hurried over from afar. Greeting to the old patriarch and the old madam. With their arrival, all the sainthood experts they passed by clasped their hands in greeting. They were very courteous, and even the saint emperors behaved in the same manner. If it was any other time, Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian definitely would have responded with a smile, except they could no longer bother with that at all now. They hurried into the residence joyfully and disappeared before everyone. Soon afterwards, the current patriarch, Chongyang Ku, Jian Chen's 3 aunts, Ling Long, Yu Fengyan, Bai Yushuang, as well as the various members of the upper echelon hurried over from everywhere. They stopped outside the residence in the end and stared at it. Inside the residence, Bai Yuntian wore a luxurious set of white robes as her face was filled with joy. She held onto Jian Chen and choked back her tears. "Xiang'er, you're finally home." Chang Yangba chuckled. "Xiang'er has become an Origin Realm sovereign now. Every time a sovereign goes into seclusion, it'll range from a few dozen years to several thousand years. It's already rather short for Xiang'er to emerge after 18 years. Jian Chen dismissed all the guards and the female servants as that was the only way to calm down the disturbance caused by an intruder trespassing on Jian Chen's residence. Jian Chen remained in the Chongyang clan, accompanying his parents and elders as they conversed. Under Jian Chen's orders, his return was not announced, so only a portion of the people in the clan knew about his presence. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had already stayed in the Chongyang clan for 3 days. During this time, Jian Chen did not take a single step away from the clan, remaining by his parents' side the entire time. He understood that the day he would leave this world was approaching. He wanted to spend some more time with his parents before he moved on, as he had no idea just how long it would be before he saw them again. Currently, in the garden of the clan, Jian Chen and Chong Yangke sat together in a pavilion. They drank together as they both reminisced the past. "Back when we were still young, I often tried to bully you, but I never succeeded. Instead, I was the one who suffered and was made fun of. You often reduced me to a horrible shape." Chong Yangke smiled as he recalled the past. He cherished the memory. Jian Chen laughed aloud and raised his cup, downing all the alcohol inside. He said at ease, "The part that gave me the greatest impression was when we were sparring. You originally wanted to bully me, yet you were injured instead. It was because of that matter that third aunt punished me quite a lot." Chong Yangke chuckled when he heard that. "My mother would have never thought that the person she punished before would become the greatest sovereign revered by all in this world." Pride appeared on Chong Yangke's face. After clinking cups with Jian Chen, he finished off his cup as well. Jian Chen smiled freely. His disagreements with Chong Yangke when he was young had instead become a lovely memory, firmly remembered by him. He cherished the memory. "We were originally 4 siblings, yet there are only the 2 of us drinking here today. Big Brother has comprehended the state of great liberation, and is cultivating in pure heart pavilion after severing his emotions and desires. I wonder if he still remembers our brotherhood. Sister has left this world as well, venturing to the distant saints' world. Even I don't know whether we'll meet in the future, and even if we do meet, I don't know if she'll be the same and still remember me. I actually wish very much that it's not just me and you drinking here right now, but that Big Brother and sister were here as well. Unfortunately, that has become just a wish now." Jian Chen became melancholy as he drank. "Sister." Chong Yangke murmured softly and looked at the sky. A sliver of longing appeared in his eyes. Although Chong Yang, who had severed his emotions and desires, he was still in this world after all. There was the chance of meeting him in the future, but his sister, Chong Yangke, might have bid a permanent farewell to him. It made his heart throb. Originally, they were 4 siblings, but now, there was only him and Jian Chen left. The female servants in the garden had already been dismissed, so only Jian Chen and Chong Yangke were in the large garden, drinking and conversing. Their laughter would ring out from time to time. They spoke a lot that day and also drank a lot. As they drank, night replaced day and day replaced night. Their voices never stopped in the garden. At this moment, Chong Yangke suddenly became serious with his flushed, tipsy face. He said, "Brother, many of the important figures in the clan have suggested to me that we should expand outwards while we have the prestige. After all, the difference between our territory and strength and prestige is just too great. What do you think? If you agree, I'll do it immediately." Jian Chen's eyes narrowed when he heard this. After a moment of silence, he gently shook his head. "Brother, the bigger the clan becomes, the more matters there are to deal with. That's not necessarily a good thing. Look at those kingdoms. Are there any of them where the princes don't turn on each other when the position of king opens up? Do you wish to see that, brother? Authority is temporary, so you can't get sucked into it. Only your personal strength determines everything. You should keep the Chongyang clan as it is right now." Chapter 1644. A terrifying uncle. The 2 brothers drank until the morning before finally parting ways. The young master of the Chongyang clan and his mother were currently in a luxurious courtyard. They were both slightly worried. At this moment, a female servant walked over quickly and said with a soft voice, "Madam, the patriarch has returned." Chong Yong-su's mother turned blank when she heard that. Then she immediately arrived before Chong Yong-su. She said to him excitedly, Xuer, since your father has returned, your uncle has probably returned to his residence as well. Quick, go find your uncle. Get him to properly train you. Your father and your uncle are brothers. He gave so many violet cloud peaches to that young island master of Three Saint Island, yet he hasn't given you a single one for some reason. We're still family after all. Yes, mother. I know what to do. Humph, the young island master completely looks down on me just because he is stronger. He even wants me to call him elder brother. Does he think he is worthy? He just relied on the violet cloud peaches at all. If I consume one, my increase in strength will definitely be greater than his with my talent. At that time, just watch me smash out the young island master's teeth. Let's see how he plans on acting arrogant before me in the future, Chongyang-su said coldly. He felt extremely displeased towards his uncle. His uncle had given so many violet cloud peaches to an outsider, yet he, the nephew, had not even received a single one. So much for your grandfather as well. He just had to put the violet cloud peach he received from the young island master away safely, refusing to give it to you no matter what. If your grandfather gave you the violet cloud peach earlier, how would the young island master still be able to dominate you? Fortunately, not a lot of people know about this. Otherwise, if the fact that the young master of the Chongyang clan was not as great as the young island master of Three Saint Island made it out, we will all be ashamed. After all, our Chongyang clan cannot be compared to Three Saint Island, said Chongyang-su's mother. She also felt much displeasure towards Chongyang-ba's actions, but she dared not show this displeasure. She could only hide it deep in her heart. Jian Chen sat on his bed within his majestic residence. He was contemplating over the matter of territory between the two worlds. The land that the world of Forsaken Saints wants is indeed a little too much. If I follow through with what they want, it'll just be too great of a loss for the four races of this world. And if I do hand over this land, the original inhabitants will have to be relocated. Relocating is not an easy matter, Jian Chen thought to himself. Fourth young master. The young master wishes to see you. At this moment, a guard's polite voice rang out from outside. Let Xuer in, Jian Chen said calmly as he looked outside. Chongyang-su walked in from outside and knelt before Jian Chen. He said politely, Chongyang-su greets uncle. Jian Chen examined Chongyang-su and smiled amicably. He said, there's no need to be so polite. You can stand. With that, Jian Chen raised his arm, and immediately, an invisible force lifted Chongyang-su up gently. Yes, uncle. Chongyang-su was filled with politeness. Although he had said several times that he wanted to surpass his uncle in the future, he still could not help but become nervous in the face of his legendary uncle. After all, his uncle was just too famous. He was the greatest sovereign in the world, the strongest existence there ever was. Even the currently influential clan dwelled under his uncle's brilliance. Jian Chen smiled at Chongyang-su and said gently, Xuer, it hasn't been easy for our Chongyang clan to go from a nameless organization to its current glory. As the young master of the clan, you have to be a model example. You can't become prideful, arrogant, let alone haughty. At the same time, you can't make trouble outside for no reason, or injure and bully other people on a whim. Do you understand? Yes, uncle. I will commit your guidance to heart. Chongyang-su replied politely. Before he had come, he had already thought of how he should ask his uncle for violet cloud peaches. He had even made up his mind to cling on to his uncle until he gave him the violet cloud peaches if he initially declined. However, when he truly faced his legendary uncle, he suddenly discovered that he had lost all courage to talk. Although his uncle treated him as family, he was utterly in fear before his uncle. He even trembled inside as if he was not facing his uncle but an indomitable god. His father and his grandfather had told him the same words many times, but he never truly took it to heart. He would just turn a deaf ear to it. However, he felt like he had lost all will to resist towards his uncle's words, firmly imprinting the words that were said to him many times deeply in his heart. Chongyang-su sensed his change before his uncle. This made him feel fear and even tremble. His forehead had even become covered with cold sweat. At that moment, he finally understood just how terrifying his uncle was. Xuer, have you come to me for something today? Jian Chen asked. He completely treated Chongyang-su as a junior of his, acting extremely amicable. This was because he thought of Shangguan Aojian when he saw Chongyang-su. The two of them were roughly the same age. And no. I've actually come this time to meet Uncle. I wish Uncle the best and to not overwork. I'll go now. Chong Yong-su stuttered a little, becoming rather unwilling to raise the matter of the violet cloud peaches. Jian Chen nodded and waved his hand. Su'er, you can go. Yes, Uncle. I'll go now. Chong Yong-su left politely. Jian Chen looked at Chong Yong-su's back and suddenly said, Su'er. Chong Yong-su seemed to leap in fright when he heard Jian Chen. He jerked before turning around, bowing towards Jian Chen. Uncle? Su'er, I understand your intentions. You've already groomed yourself to possess the arrogance of a wastrel son. You have a haughty mindset. If you don't change it soon, you'll cause a lot of trouble sooner or later. No one dares to offend the Chongyang clan with its current strength, but that's because we don't purposefully provoke or abuse others. If you casually offend other people from today onwards, there'll still be some people who'll run the risk of offending the Chongyang clan to take your life. Do you understand? Jian Chen said sternly. Chong Yong-su became rather pale and responded politely. I understand. Su'er, you must remember that our Chongyang clan is not afraid of anything. No matter how powerful the enemies are, we will not fear them. But we can't go causing problems without any reason. Do you understand? If you want to become an expert, you must go on journeys. There are no experts on the Tianyuan continent who have been raised in the comfort of their own homes. Instead, they've experienced countless storms of blood and made their way up by wading through blood. Your current strength basically completely originates from heavenly resources. It won't be of any benefit to you as time goes on. It'll even affect your foundation, Jian Chen said sternly. He seemed like a senior lecturing a junior right now. Yes, Uncle. I will definitely bear that in mind. Chong Yong-su's forehead had already become covered in sweat, and he trembled even harder inside. He felt more and more terrified about his uncle. He had never thought that his uncle was so great. He clearly had not come home many times and had not even seen him many times, yet his uncle knew exactly what was happening with him. Chong Yong-su even gained the impression that there was nothing in the world that his uncle did not know about, as if the entire world was in his uncle's palm. The thought made Chong Yong-su feel even more respect for his uncle, and he feared him. Chapter 1645. Shen Fong. Chong Yong-su had basically turned into a completely new person when he emerged from Jian Chen's residence. It was not the first time he had seen his uncle, but it was the first time he had spoken to him from such a proximity. He had only seen his uncle from afar in the past, so he did not feel any mental pressure. However, he finally understood just how terrifying his uncle was when he saw him from such a close range. Even when his uncle purposefully concealed his presence, he was still filled with fear toward his uncle. He did not mention a single word about asking for violet cloud peaches, despite planning to beforehand. It was not because of his uncle's strictness or brutality. Instead, Chong Yong-su simply lacked the courage. Jian Chen's words echoed through Chong Yong-su's head after leaving the residence. He seemed rather absent-minded as he made his way through the clan without any intentions of going anywhere. When he raised his head again, he discovered that he had arrived home unknowingly. Su'er, have you obtained violet cloud peaches from your uncle? I've heard that he's not a stingy person. He has given away so many of them to an outsider before, so as his nephew, you'll still be able to get a couple of those immortal peaches no matter what. Tell me, just how many did he give you? Chong Yong-su's mother waited anxiously at home. As soon as Chong Yong-su returned, she asked urgently. Chong Yong-su remained rather dazed. He sat down on a seat absent-minded and only shook his head gently. He said nothing. Su'er, your uncle didn't give you any violet cloud peaches at all? This. The eyes of Chong Yong-su's mother widened. Disbelief was plastered across her face before displeasure quickly replaced it. How can your uncle do that? He has given the young island master of 3 Saint Islands so many, yet he treats his own nephew like this. He's your father's brother after all. No, I have to go find your grandfather. Your uncle completely treats you as an outsider. No, even worse than an outsider. Chong Yong-su's mother became furious and immediately went to find Chong Yong-ba to complain. Chong Yong-su immediately stopped her and said, Mother, don't go looking for grandfather. You can't blame uncle. Uncle's abilities are so great that there's nothing in the world that can hide from him. He'll know. Chong Yong-su's face became filled with uncontainable fear when he mentioned his uncle. Xie Yan stared at Chong Yong-su strangely. She completely understood her son, but she had never expected him to seemingly change so much after seeing his uncle. He seemed to fear his uncle very much. Uncle is right. There are no experts who are raised from the comfort of their home. Mother, I've made up my mind. I'll leave the clan tomorrow morning to go on a journey. I won't bring anyone with me this time. The next morning, Chongyang-su left the clan. He went out alone. Only he himself understood that his entire temperament seemed to have changed after listening to his uncle's words. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes in his residence. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space and all the buildings, allowing him to see Chongyang-su, who had already left the clan. He nodded in satisfaction. After a moment of silence, Jian Chen left his residence and headed to the Forbidden Grounds, the place where Chongyang-ba cultivated. Father, in this box is the violet cloud peach and the comprehension tea leaf that I've prepared for Sewer. Once he returns from his journey, please give him this box if he has truly changed. Otherwise, please hold on to it forever. Although Sewer's my brother's son, I can't support and raise a wastrel. Jian Chen passed a box containing the 2 heavenly resources to Chongyang-ba and said sternly. Chongyang-ba accepted the box and sighed gently. We, the seniors, have an unshiftable blame for Sewer becoming like this. Xiang'er, don't worry. I know what to do. Jian Chen nodded. He conversed with his father some more before leaving. On this day, Jian Chen left the Chongyang clan and arrived at the center of the city, the busiest location. There was quite a large inn there. The inn might not have been very famous on the continent, but in Lore City and the Jessen Kingdom, it possessed quite an extraordinary status. This was because the Chongyang clan had always protected this inn since establishment. The owner of the inn had close ties with the most authoritative figures of the Chongyang clan as well, Chongyang-ba and Bai Yuntian. Not only had she been invited to the Chongyang clan as a guest, Chongyang-ba and Bai Yuntian would even lower themselves to visit her at the start of every year with gifts. It was also because of this connection with the Chongyang clan that this inn became a place that could not be provoked within Lore City. Even the wastrel scions of hermit or ancient clans had to dismiss their haughtiness and act obediently here, unwilling to cause trouble. Whenever someone made trouble in the inn or began fighting, the guards of the Chongyang clan would chase them out. As time went on, many people understood that offending the inn was the same as directly offending the Chongyang clan. Lore City developed rapidly, leading to the addition of many luxurious inns. This inn was not the largest, nor the most luxurious inn in Lore City, but it was the city's most popular inn because all the representatives of the various organizations who came to visit the Chongyang clan would choose to stay in this inn. On this day, the inn welcomed a young man who carried 2 swords on his back. As soon as the young man entered the inn, a waiter jogged over and apologized. Sir, may I ask if you are dining or staying? If you plan on staying, I must apologize, as all our rooms are. Suddenly, the waiter's voice came to a halt. His eyes widened at Jian Chen as disbelief flooded his face. Why, your sovereign Jian Chen, the waiter cried out in shock. At that moment, he completely doubted his eyes. He had actually seen the legendary sovereign Jian Chen in person. He was not unfamiliar with Jian Chen's appearance because he had seen his statue countless times. However, this was the first time he had actually seen him in person. There were quite a few people dining on the first floor of the inn. Many people heard the waiter's shocked cries, so the entire inn fell silent. Quite a few people became stunned. But very soon, everyone returned to their senses. They all stood up and bowed towards Jian Chen. Their faces were filled with excitement, respect, and admiration. Fourth young master. At this moment, a familiar but old voice rang out. An old woman with a head full of gray hair made her way down the stairs with the support of 2 female servants. Joy filled her face. Madam. Jian Chen ran over. His heart throbbed when he saw the old face. This old woman was Kendall's wife, Shen Fong. Chapter 1646. Rue Jin emerges. Since the average lifespan of ordinary people on the Tianyuan continent was 200 years. Shen Fong should not look so old, but Kendall's death took a very heavy toll on her mind. Time could not erode Shen Fong's love for Kendall, so even after several dozen years, she still failed to get over her sorrow. This was why she had become an old woman despite only being middle-aged before. Madam, you have to look after yourself. You can't forget that you have Sans. Even if you don't care about yourself anymore, you have to care about your son. Jian Chen ran up to support Shen Fong, who even struggled to walk. He felt rather pained inside. He could already sense that there was not much life force left in Shen Fong. She did not have much time left. With his current strength, he could help her easily. He could effortlessly give her another 1,000 years of lifespan. However, she had already died inside, so if he gave her more life force selfishly, it would not help her. Instead, it would be a painful torture. That was exactly why Jian Chen did not take the action he wished to take. He did not wish for Shen Fong to leave, but he did not wish for her to live in pain either. Thank you, young master. You've done plenty for my family already. It's San's father's fortune to be able to meet you. Young master, there are a lot of people here, so let's go up and talk, smiled Shen Fong. She spoke rather weakly, seemingly running out of vigor. Shen Fong disappeared from the first floor under Jian Chen's support, leaving all the diners stunned. Disbelief flooded their faces. Oh my god! Just who is the owner of the inn? Sovereign Jian Chen is actually supporting her personally. A while later, an uproar erupted on the first floor. Everyone had become utterly shocked as if they had just seen the most unbelievable thing in the world. 4 hours later, Jian Chen left the inn. He felt rather depressed. He tried to persuade Shen Fong during their conversation. He hoped that she could get her to overcome her sorrow. Only like that could he assist her. Letting her live for several thousand more years would not pose a problem if she agreed. Unfortunately, Shen Fong never let go of Kendall and refused Jian Chen's assistance. In her words, Kendall was very lonely in heaven. He needed someone to accompany him, and she would be that person. Shen Fong's words left Jian Chen helpless. It was still useless even when he mentioned Sans. At this moment, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he raised his head towards the distant sky and shot off as a streak of violet light. He vanished into the horizon in a split second, having reached unbelievable speeds. The space near the mountain range located in the depths of Dragon Island suddenly started to distort. A huge golden gate rapidly formed in the distortions of space. There was an independent miniature world within the gate. Huge gravestones filled the entire world, and transparent dragon souls drifted around. They would roar from time to time, and their roars echoed across the entire island. This was the dragon's necropolis. The remains of many dragons were buried here, including Class 9 dragons. At this moment, a golden figure flew out from the depths of the necropolis. He radiated with a powerful draconic aura. All the weaker dragon souls collapsed as they trembled when they sensed the aura. The golden figure did not stop as he flew, directly flying out of the necropolis. The space gate to the necropolis slowly closed after he exited, and Dragon Island recovered its previous peace. The golden figure slowly dispersed his presence, and the golden light around him gradually vanished as well, revealing a handsome middle-aged man in golden dragon robes. We've finally emerged. It has been several decades. I wonder how Jian Chen is right now. Suddenly, a female's voice rang out. A beauty who seemed to be in her 20s walked out from behind the middle-aged man. She wore fire-red feathers. A black-robed old man emerged after the woman. The three of them stood together, and every single one of them radiated with powerful presences. The middle-aged man was the strongest among them, having already reached the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Emperor. The woman was just slightly weaker, having reached the 8th heavenly layer of Saint Emperor. The old man was the weakest among the three of them, but he was also a Saint Emperor, except he was only at the 6th heavenly layer. The three of them were Rue Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu. They had remained in secluded cultivation on Dragon Island for many years. Suddenly, there was a flash of violet light. Before they could even react, the streak of violet light had landed before them with unbelievable speed and a young man was revealed. Rue Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu narrowed their eyes, and they became shocked. The three of them had already become Saint Emperors, and one of them was even at the 9th heavenly layer, only an inch away from the origin realm. However, they had still failed to react before the streak of light, which completely astounded them. But in the next moment, they became even more shocked when they saw the figure that emerged from the violet light. Disbelief was plastered across their faces. Jian Chen! The three of them cried out. When they connected him with the streak of violet light earlier, they could no longer remain composed. They had never thought that Jian Chen's strength would actually progress at such a terrifying rate after several decades of not seeing him. The streak of violet light was so fast that it had completely exceeded the Saint Emperor of the Pang clan, the person who was once known to be the fastest in the world. Jian Chen obviously became overjoyed when he saw his 3 old acquaintances. He immediately clasped his hands and said, "Congratulations on emerging, seniors. Jian Chen, you sure have come quickly. Alright, what level of cultivation have you reached now? I can't tell at all. I can't even sense your presence." Hong Lian stared at Jian Chen in surprise. "I can't tell your strength or sense any of your presence either. I wouldn't even know that you were standing before me if I closed my eyes. There are only 2 possibilities for that. First, you used a secret technique to hide yourself. The other possibility is that you've already surpassed the 3 of us in strength," Ruijin said as he stared at Jian Chen. Shock gradually appeared on his face because he had already determined that the latter was extremely likely. Only that could explain why Jian Chen could move so quickly that they could not even react. "We're all Saint Emperors, so if it's the second scenario, wouldn't that mean that you've already reached the origin realm, Jian Chen?" That's impossible. It has only been a few short decades," He Yu said in shock. Chapter 1647. Prior to the negotiations. 1. Jian Chen. Have you really surpassed Saint Emperor and reached the origin realm in the past few decades? Ruijin asked in shock. He stared at Jian Chen closely, waiting for his answer. Hong Lian and He Yu were fixated on Jian Chen as well. This question also weighed on their minds. They had no idea just how the outside world had changed during the decades they spent in secluded cultivation. According to their understanding, there were less than a handful of origin realm experts even with the 4 races combined. If Jian Chen was one of them now, it would just be too shocking. Jian Chen chuckled. "Seniors, many major matters have happened on the Tianyuan continent during the years you spent in seclusion. My personal strength has skyrocketed due to a few fortuitous encounters, so I should have already surpassed the origin realm now." What? Surpassed the origin realm? This time, the 3 of them collectively cried out. Their eyes widened and bulged as they were completely drowned in disbelief. Their hearts began to surge. Surpassed the origin realm? How is this possible? "It has only been so long," the 3 of them murmured. They had become rather dazed. If it were not for the fact that they knew that Jian Chen was not someone who liked to joke around, they would directly believe that Jian Chen was kidding. According to their understanding, origin realm experts were unimaginably powerful. As for surpassing the origin realm, such a matter had completely exceeded their understanding. "Seniors, why don't you go rest in the Chongyang clan first? It'll be convenient for me to slowly tell you what has happened on the Tianyuan continent as well," said Jian Chen, inviting the 3 of them to his home politely. Ruijin sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He said, "Fair enough, we'll go to the Chongyang clan first then." Jian Chen brought Ruijin, Hong Lian, and He Yu back to the Chongyang clan in Lore City. As soon as they entered the clan, the 3 of them were secretly surprised as they could clearly sense all the Saint Emperors in the Chongyang clan. There were so many of them even though several decades ago, they did not even have that many Saint Kings, let alone Saint Emperors. Looks like the world really has changed drastically in the years we've spent in seclusion. The overall strength of the world has been raised to a whole new level. The 3 of them sighed emotionally. Originally, they thought that their strength after they emerged could allow them to be ranked amongst the apex, even if they could not become invincible. However, looking at it now, they just found the thought to be hilariously naive. Jian Chen and the 3 others sat together in Jian Chen's majestic residence. Then Jian Chen began to explain everything that had happened across the years to them in detail. A few hours later, the 3 of them learnt about all the changes to the world in the time they were missing. It filled them with amazement. "I never thought that the world would have changed so drastically in the decades we spent cultivating. Even so many origin realm experts have appeared. The current age is so glorious that even the ancient times cannot rival it," Ruijin sighed emotionally. "The current age belongs to origin realm experts. Saint Emperors are no longer anything now. Since the crisis of the world has been averted, the laws of the world are approaching perfection, and origin energy is slowly reappearing. Obviously, I can't let such a great chance slide through our fingers. As a result, I plan on continuing my cultivation and reach the origin realm as soon as possible," Hong Lian said sternly. "With our current strength, we can no longer provide Jian Chen with any assistance. I want to keep cultivating as well and break through to the origin realm as soon as possible," Ruijin also said. He Yu glanced past the 2 of them and chuckled. "Looks like the 2 of you have been quite motivated. You want to go back into seclusion right after emerging. Oh well, since you plan on cultivating some more, I'll go with you as well. Otherwise, our difference in strength will only become greater and greater. Under Jian Chen's arrangements, the three of them remained at the Chongyang clan to cultivate. Origin realm experts had made a few arrangements in Chongyang clan long ago. The energy of the world was extremely abundant there, more than a dozen times more abundant than the protector clans, which earned it the name of the greatest cultivation location in the world. Some origin energy had even gathered there, so the effects of cultivating there were far greater than remaining in the necropolis. After all, the necropolis did not have any origin energy. The three of them entered secluded cultivation, and Jian Chen left the Chongyang clan as well. As his two wives, Huang Luan and Yu Yu, were still in secluded cultivation, he had not seen the two of them when he returned this time. Jian Chen visited Flame City afterwards. The Flame Mercenaries had already developed to a point where it had several million internal members and several tens of million external members. They had become a superpower that had branches littered across the continent, even extending into the Sea Realm, Wasteland Continent, and Beast God Continent. As the four races became united and abandoned their old territorial mindset, the Flame Mercenaries were no longer composed of just humans. There were members of the 100 races, Sea Race, and magical beasts as well. The Flame Mercenaries remained under Bai Lian's control. As she spent just too much time managing the mercenaries, her strength had not progressed much at all. Even after consuming a violet cloud peach and large quantities of other precious heavenly resources, she remained as a saint king. Meanwhile, Du Gufeng, Xiao Tianyu, Wang Yifeng, Yun Zhen, Senior N, and so on had all reached Saint Emperor. Du Gufeng and Xiao Tianyu improved at particularly astonishing rates with their impressive talents, having reached the 4th and 5th heavenly layers after consuming heavenly resources. Apart from that, Jetta Tai, who had originally joined him under his threats, had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King as well. In all those years, he spent all his time in Flame City apart from returning to his clan from time to time. His mindset slowly changed as well as Jian Chen's strength gradually increased. He had been forced to follow Jian Chen originally, so he still felt rather reluctant before. However, not only did he treat himself as a part of the Flame Mercenaries now, he even took pride in it. Jian Chen's great-grandfather Bai Hai also remained in Flame City during all these years. He had basically become Bai Lian's supervisor for cultivation. All the members of the upper echelon would always see Bai Hai urge Bai Lian to cultivate more patiently. 3 days later, Jian Chen left Flame City. When he reappeared, he was already standing on Three Saint Island. As soon as he set foot on Three Saint Island, Shangguan Mu'er appeared before him silently. She stared at him for a while and said, "Jian Chen, I know that something has gone wrong during your secluded cultivation before. Tell me. I want to see if I can help." Jian Chen was stunned before smiling bitterly. "Looks like I really can't hide it from you. However, this problem is rather difficult to deal with." Jian Chen told her about the hidden problem that had appeared when he broke through to the 9th layer of the chaotic body. Chapter 1648. Prior to the negotiations, too, Shangguan Mu'er frowned after learning about Jian Chen's latent problem. She became worried. "This is very severe. We have to deal with it as soon as possible. If you suddenly lose control in this world, it'll be just like facing the crisis of the world again. If we can't stop it, the entire world will face destruction." Jian Chen also became rather stern. He had already thought of the consequences, but he could do nothing about it. "I plan on settling the matters in this world as soon as possible before moving on to the Saints' world. If I remain here with my current strength, I won't progress at all. Only the Saints' world can provide me with what I need for my chaotic body to grow. I believe that I'll be able to eliminate the problem with my soul once I grow stronger," Jian Chen said with a heavy heart. He was actually thinking of something else as well, which was going to the Immortals' world. This was because the twin swords originated from the Immortals' world. They were the sect treasures of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens, the chief sect of the 9 great sects of the Immortals' world. During the intense battle in the past, the Immortals' world had suffered heavy casualties. Their so-called greatest expert, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, had died, while the old master of the twin swords passed away after suffering the intense backlash caused by the fusion of the two swords. At the same time, the twin swords that were known to be one of the 10 great god artifacts in the Immortals' world shattered, leading to their sword spirits to fall to a lower world and them accepting him as their master. Jian Chen knew extremely well that the help he had received from the twin swords was the reason for his current achievements. Although the sword spirits rarely brought up the matters of the past during the days Jian Chen spent with them, he knew extremely well that the sword spirits wanted to return to the immortals' world very much. At the same time, they still had attachments to their old master because it was he who had forged them. He was like their father. Aside from that, both the azulate swords Lao Jian Chen had cultivated in the past and his current chaotic body originated from the sword sect of Violet Heavens. From a certain aspect, he had become a disciple of the sect, so it was extremely important for him to go to the immortals' world. The saints' world was the path to the immortals' world. If he wanted to go to the immortals' world, he had to go through the saints' world, as there was no direct path to the immortals' world from the Tianyuan continent. The sword spirits had also become completely lost exactly because they had taken his soul to the Tianyuan continent in the past. Shangguan Mu'er fell silent when she heard Jian Chen's words. She only responded after quite a while. Your problem lies in the soul. Why don't you let me try and see if my music can help you? After a moment of deliberation, Jian Chen agreed. Afterwards, Shangguan Mu'er attempted to influence Jian Chen's soul with her music, but there were no effects at all even after many attempts. Her music had basically become useless before Jian Chen, unable to influence his soul at all. The only thing she could manage to do was to calm him down through music. As she played, Jian Chen watched Shangguan Mu'er on with quite some interest. When she stopped, he asked, Mu'er, your zither has a total of 36 strings, but why do I only ever see you use the first half? You never touch the latter half. Shangguan Mu'er looked at her zither and said, the zither of the demonic cry has 36 strings, and there's a requirement for corresponding strength to play each one. My current strength is nowhere near enough to play all of its strings. A sliver of surprise appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He could not help but examine the zither carefully. This zither is actually so profound, where you even need the corresponding strength to play each string. You're at mid-reciprocity, yet you can only play a portion of the strings. Looks like this zither has quite an extraordinary origin. The zither of the demonic cry really does have quite an extraordinary origin. Many people on the Tianyuan continent believe that I condensed this zither from Saint Force, but that's not the case because I found it outside when I was young, the heavenly enchantress said calmly. You found it? Jian Chen became stunned as his expression turned strange. That's right. I found the zither of the demonic cry. I just never told anyone about this. You're the first. Shangguan Mu'er stared deeply at Jian Chen and continued. When I found this zither, it was buried in soil. I had only discovered it because a tiny corner of it was revealed. I had uncovered it with tremendous effort, and it was so heavy that I could not even budge it with my power from before. Then I accidentally cut my hand on the strings. When a droplet of my blood fell on it, I discovered that I had actually formed a slight connection with the zither. It was also through this connection that I learnt the zither's name. I also gained a cultivation method in my head. I used that cultivation method to make my way to where I am today. I see. Looks like this zither is a pretty good treasure. The original owner probably died, which is why it ended up here through an accident, Jian Chen understood. He had already seen something like this before. The Anata Tower had also ended up in this world because its original owner had passed away. It was now in his hands. Father, you finally emerged from cultivation. At this moment, a surprised and joyful voice rang out. Shangguan Aojian ran over from the place where he cultivated delightfully. Jian Chen stood up and leapt off the rock gently. He smiled at Shangguan Aojian. He was extremely satisfied with this son of his because he could not see any arrogance on his son at all. Both his personality and morals satisfied Jian Chen. Afterwards, the two of them began to talk about everything. Jian Chen told Shangguan Aojian about matters regarding cultivation, while Shangguan Aojian told him about a few interesting things he had experienced throughout the years. Father, you have no idea. My younger brother Chongyang Su has challenged me constantly in the past years, but I've reduced him to a horrible condition every time. He runs away every time. Shangguan Aojian could not help but laugh aloud when he mentioned Chongyang Su. Jian Chen also broke into laughter when he heard that. He said, Chongyang Su's not even a saint king right now, yet you're no weaker than a saint emperor. There are even many saint emperors who aren't your opponent. Aren't you just bullying your younger brother? Though, Xiao Bao, I still haven't taken you to see your grandfather and grandmother yet. It's time for them to know your other identity. Shangguan Aojian could not help but become slightly eager when he heard his father's words. He had seen his grandfather and grandmother before, but they had never learned that he was actually Jian Chen's son, and they always treated him as the young island master of Three Saint Island. Internally, he desired their recognition as their grandson. Chapter 1649. Prior to the negotiations. 3. Father, when are you going to take me to see grandfather and grandmother? Shangguan Aojian asked. Then he seemed to think of something and smiled. Before, when I wanted Chong Yong-su to call me elder brother, he was completely unwilling. Once I see grandfather and grandmother, he'll have to call me elder brother. Haha, I really do look forward to how his face will be like at that time. Jian Chen could not help but smile after hearing that. He looked at Shangguan Aojian gently and said, once we leave Three Saint Island, I'll take you to the Chongyang clan. Then Jian Chen turned towards Shangguan Mu'er and said, Mu'er, you should come along as well to see my parents. A sliver of eagerness appeared in Jian Chen's gaze. Shangguan Mu'er remained silent. There was conflict in her eyes, but she still ended up gently nodding after quite some consideration. Jian Chen was immediately delighted when he saw Shangguan Mu'er agree. According to his understanding of Shangguan Mu'er, she would have declined without any hesitation if he brought it up in the past. Now that she agreed, it meant that she really had changed quite a lot across the years. There are just 2 years before the day you decided on with the Spirit King will arrive. Have you made up your mind about the matter of territory? How much land do you plan on giving to the world of Forsaken Saints? The topic of the conversation changed, and Shangguan Mu'er mentioned the matter of land to Jian Chen. Jian Chen shook his head gently. Even until now, he still had not made up his mind about just how much land to give to the other world. This matter would affect the sea race, 100 races, and magical beasts as well, so he needed to discuss it with the respective leaders. Father, I wandered the Tian-Yuan continent often in the past few years. Because the Tian-Yuan continent was going to give up some land to the foreign world, I specially went to the places that were about to be handed over. I found that more or less half the people who lived there were against the matter. There were even some people who had become determined to protect their homelands, contacting other clans and sects who shared the same mentality to form a group. These people planned to stop the arrival of the foreign world. They would rather die in battle than give up their territory. After all, these sects and clans have remained in the same place for many years already. Some of their ancestral homes are there as well, so getting them to leave will be very difficult or even impossible. They won't waver even in the face of wealth enough to sway countries, said Shangguan Aojian. Jian Chen frowned when he heard that. He immediately expanded his soul and enveloped the entire Tian-Yuan continent in a single moment. At that moment, the countless people who lived there were all under his observation. As expected, he saw countless humans who were about to face relocation on the lands that the world of Forsaken Saints had demanded. There were sects, clans, and even a few rather powerful countries. They had clearly already formed an alliance, all flying flags of the alliance. They were all ready to die for their cause. Among the countless people conversing, Jian Chen learned from a few people that most of them had no ill will towards the sovereigns making the decision. They were just extremely reluctant because they had been born and grew up on their land. The land was also property and heritage that had been passed down across countless years for them. If they had to relocate just like that, it would basically mean that everything they had built up across the generations would be lost. Even though the sovereigns had promised to make it up to them, even though they knew the great sacrifices the other world had made against the crisis of the world, it was not enough to waver their determination of remaining on their territory because it was their home. At the same time, Jian Chen heard some satisfaction from a few people towards the decisions of the sovereigns. There was even resentment, but not a lot of people were like that. Jian Chen also saw a few generals speak emotionally to their armies in a few kingdoms. Without any exception, what they spoke about was protecting their homeland. They were determined to fight the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints to death. Jian Chen sighed when he observed this. There were quite a lot of human cultivators, amounting to a rough sum of several billion. If they all planned on remaining on their land, an unprecedentedly intense war would erupt against the world of Forsaken Saints. The losses would be so great that it would be unimaginable. After all, the Origin Realm experts on the Tian-Yuan continent did not possess absolute control over the countless people on the Tian-Yuan continent. Even though they were respected and revered, once they did something against the interest of people, there would still be people who would stand forward to protect their interests, regardless of if they were sovereigns or if they could wipe out the people with a wave of the hand. They would protect their homelands, and even death could not make them change their minds. Jian Chen's soul continued to expand, directly enveloping the territories of all 4 races. He discovered that the same thing was happening with the magical beasts and the sea race. Many of the organizations in the 2 races had joined together, unwilling to give up their land. Only the 100 races remained rather peaceful, without any signs of resistance or objection. The entire 100 races, ranging from saint emperors to ordinary people, all followed the war god. Anything he said was like an edict from heaven. None of them would object the war god's decision. This was because the 100 races was originally one that possessed faith. Their faith lay with the current war god, Tai Ta. Jian Chen, there are still 2 more years before the negotiations. Have you made your decision? Tai Ta's voice rang out in Jian Chen's mind when his soul enveloped the 100 races. Jian Chen did not try to hide. He told Tai Ta everything he saw. Sharing territory with the foreign world was no longer as simple as it seemed. Jian Chen, you should know about the true identity of the elven god tree. God King Adriana once told me to pull the people from the world of forsaken saints to my side. They're actually spirit sages. The spirit sages are a large race and clan in the higher world. They have quite the heritage. Tai Ta's voice rang out. The 2 of them were conversing through their souls from several tens of millions of kilometers away. The spirit sages? Jian Chen became stunned. He did not know about the spirit sages, but he did know about the god clan that Tai Ta came from. According to the sword spirits, he learnt that the god clan was a peak clan in the saints' world. During their age of glory, it was no exaggeration to call them the greatest clan in the saints' world because the grand prime of the god clan back then was the greatest expert in the saints' world. Even the greatest expert of the immortals' world, the nirvanic immortal Exalt, was not his opponent. Since the spirit sages could raise the attention of the god clan, their power was evident. Chapter 1650. Prior to the negotiations, 4. Jian Chen sank into contemplation after his conversation with Tai Ta. He had never thought that the people from the world of forsaken saints who called themselves forsaken saints actually had such a great background, where even the god clan would try to pull them to their side. He could not help but re-evaluate the world of forsaken saints. Jian Chen thought for quite some time. The light in his eyes flickered. Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojian did not disturb him when they saw that he was deep in thought. A while later, Jian Chen made up his mind. He became determined and looked at Shangguan Aojian and Shangguan Mu'er. He said, "Let's go to the Tianyuan continent right now." Shangguan Aojian obviously agreed happily to this suggestion. He wished to gain the recognition of his grandmother and grandfather as soon as possible. During the time he roamed the Tianyuan continent, he had gone to the Chongyang clan many times. As he was the young island master of 3 Saint Island, Chongyang Ba and Bai Yun Tian had personally received him every time, so he saw his grandfather and grandmother every time. However, he did not sense any of the affection and concern he yearned for from them, only politeness and respect. This was all due to the fact that he was the young island master of 3 Saint Island. This was not what Shangguan Aojian wished to see. He would have accepted anyone else's politeness happily and would not feel inconvenienced in any way, let alone feeling uncomfortable. However, Shangguan Aojian was unable to accept his grandmother and grandfather behaving so politely towards him. It even made his heart throb, making him feel bitter inside. Jian Chen left 3 Saint Island with Shangguan Aojian and Shangguan Mu'er. When the 2 of them left, Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu walked over from the other side with their junior sister Qin Qin. The 2 of them looked towards Qin Qin and both sighed inside. Several decades had passed, but Qin Qin had already begun her journey of cultivating and attained quite the achievement, so she possessed an extremely lengthy lifespan. As a result, she seemed the same as before, remaining as pure and beautiful as she was in her 20s. The only difference was that she now exuded a sense of maturity. Qin Qin looked in the direction that Jian Chen had flown off and sighed emotionally inside. A sliver of emotion that she had hidden very deeply in her heart appeared as well. Qin Qin had indeed fallen in love with Jian Chen, and even Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu had learnt about it. However, she had already understood many things across the several decades. She knew that she was not fated to be with Jian Chen in this life, so she began to hide the emotion deeply in her heart, sealing it off coldly. Jian Chen returned to the Chongyang clan in Lore City with Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojian. This time, the three of them did not directly fly in. Instead, they entered through the front entrance. His appearance rather alarmed the guards at the main entrance of the clan. All of them knelt in disbelief. They directly wondered inside about what their fourth young master was planning to directly enter through the main entrance. As guards of the front door, they had never seen Jian Chen enter through here. Every single time, he would move mysteriously, appearing in the clan like he had teleported before leaving in the same way, making it impossible to know his whereabouts. I want to see my parents for some matters. Please send someone to contact them. Jian Chen immediately ordered the guards the moment he stepped into the clan. Yes, sir. This one will immediately contact the old master and madam. One of the guards directly felt confused towards the young master's irregular behavior, but he did not dare to hesitate at all despite his doubts. He replied politely before running inside as quickly as possible, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen brought Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojin into the clan and directly headed towards the discussion hall. The three of them did not move very quickly, traveling at an ordinary person's speed. Without any exception, all the groups of guards they passed by would bow towards the three of them. Reverence filled their face. The Chongyang clan had been expanded a few times, but it did not occupy too great of a space. Very soon, Jian Chen entered the discussion hall with Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojin. At the same time, Bai Yuntian and Chongyang Ba received the message from the guard and emerged from the forbidden grounds. They also entered the discussion hall. Jian Chen dismissed all the visible and hidden guards in the discussion hall, so there was only the five of them present. Haha, so the island mistress and young island master of Three Saint Island have come to visit. I have failed to welcome you from afar, so please forgive me. Xiang'er, why didn't you tell your father earlier than the island mistress was paying a visit? I could have made some preparations. Chongyang Ba immediately clasped his hands to greet Shangguan Mu'er when he saw her. He was unable to contain his respect, but he also blamed Jian Chen a little. Although his son was the greatest expert in the world now, the island mistress of Three Saint Island was still an Origin Realm expert. She was so powerful that she was the second greatest in both name and reality. In fact, her deterrence during the negotiations of the two worlds while Jian Chen was in seclusion had stopped the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints from acting brazenly. As a result, Chongyang Ba believed he should have held a grand welcoming ceremony for the visit of someone so important. Only that was enough to welcome someone like the island mistress of Three Saint Island. Jian Chen smiled mysteriously. He did not answer the question. Instead, he turned towards Shangguan Aojin and said, Xiao Bao, why don't you greet your grandfather and grandmother? Without any hesitation, Shangguan Aojin took a step forwards and directly dropped to his knees. He said, Grandson greets grandmother and grandfather. This scene immediately stunned Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. The two of them stared at the kneeling young island master in disbelief. His words boomed through their heads like a bolt from the blue, shocking them to the point where they had become dazed. They struggled to return to their senses. Xiang'er, what is going on? The young island master is... Bai Yuntian felt like her mind had become a complete mess, preventing her from thinking clearly. Jian Chen chuckled. Mother, why do you still call him the young island master? The young island master of Three Saint Island is actually my son as well as your grandson. I just kept this a secret the whole time, which was why no one on the Tianyuan continent knew his identity. What? The young island master is Xiang'er's son? This, Bai Yuntian's eyes widened and her heart churned. She had never thought that she actually had a grandson, and her grandson was already so old. Moreover, she had met him so many times already. Chongyang Ba, who stood beside her, became utterly astounded as well. He stared at Shangguan Aojin, no longer able to maintain his composure. However, he soon thought of something and immediately asked, This child's mother is... Mu'er greets father and mother. Shangguan Mu'er bowed towards Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. Chapter 1651. Prior to the negotiations, 5. Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian both became stunned. They stared at Shangguan Mu'er in a daze. At that moment, they found that their minds had stopped working. The island mistress of Three Saint Islands' name was thunderous to their ears. Back when Jian Chen was in seclusion, and the Origin Realm experts of the two worlds were negotiating, the Origin Realm experts that belonged to the Tianyuan continent side were absolutely filled with fear. In order to avoid any conflict with the foreign Origin Realm experts, They had set the location of negotiations to the City Lord's estate in Flame City. This was an indication to just how pressured the Origin Realm experts of this world felt when the Origin Realm experts of the other world remained here. During the negotiations, the Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent side could see the fear for the island mistress of Three Saint Island from the foreign Origin Realm experts, which allowed them to understand that the foreigners would not speak brazenly or try to intimidate them during the negotiations. This was not because of Flame City but because of the island mistress of Three Saint Island. After all, Flame City would only stop Xiongzhong's group from fighting and destroying the place. If the outcome displeased them, they could have used threats or even just intimidate the representatives of this world. There was no need for them to act so politely and fearful. The true deterrence was the island mistress of Three Saint Island. Although Chongyang Ba and Bai Yuntian never took part in the negotiations, they knew a lot of the details due to their unique identity. As a result, the couple felt respect from the bottom of their hearts for the island mistress of Three Saint Island. Even though she was not as powerful as their son, her existence was enough to deter all the Origin Realm experts from the foreign world aside from the Spirit King. Yet in that moment, the island mistress who they respected so much was actually calling them mother and father. It was just too shocking, shaking the depths of their old souls. Why, you're actually the child's mother? Chongyang Ba only recovered after quite a long while. He immediately stared at Shangguan Mu'er with shock and disbelief plastered across his face. He would have never even dreamt of something like this. The female sovereign who he respected so much was actually his daughter-in-law. Shangguan Mu'er glanced at Shangguan Aojian and nodded gently as she saw how shocked the old couple had become. Chongyang Ba immediately gasped after receiving her confirmation. His heart beat extremely heavily at that moment. As a matter of fact, his heart had never beaten so quickly. They felt even more shocked now than they felt when they learned that their son was no weaker than the Spirit King. So you're actually my grandson. Tears pooled in by Yuntian's eyes emotionally as she looked at Shangguan Aojian benevolently. She could not help but clench the pouch of fragrance that Shangguan Aojian had initially gifted to her tightly. Shangguan Aojian had personally made this pouch of fragrance. He had used large quantities of precious heavenly resources. The value of the heavenly resources was enough to shock countless people. Only now did Bai Yuntian learn that the pouch of fragrance was actually a gift from her own grandson, so her value of the pouch of fragrance soared several times over. There was obviously no longer a need to keep Shangguan Mu'er and Shangguan Aojian's other identity a secret. Very soon, this stunning piece of news spread across the entire Chongyang clan, shocking them all. The most shocked person was Chongyang Ku. He could only sigh emotionally inside. Soon afterwards, the news spread across the entire Tianyuan continent like wildfire. It had even spread across the three other races, surprising everyone in the world. Countless people sighed in amazement. In Flame City, a young girl passed through the bustling streets with a young boy, constantly moving from shop to shop. Whenever she saw something that caught her eye, she would buy it without any hesitation no matter the price. She was so extravagant that the descendants of many large and luxurious clans could not help but sigh. The two people who seemed like siblings were two of the three Origin Realm experts who guarded Flame City, Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. However, they had currently changed their appearances, so only those who knew their behavior and habits very well could recognize them. Conversations about Shangguan Aojian and Shangguan Mu'er's other identity were littered across the city. Obviously, the two of them had heard about it as well. The young island master of Three Saint Island is actually Big Brother's son, Xiao Ling murmured. She thought a little before saying to Xiao Jin, "Brother Xiao Jin, let's go to the Chongyang clan." "All right then, Sister Xiao Ling," Xiao Jin sighed a little. He was completely helpless. As a spirit of the attributes, his body grew very slowly, but his mind was unlike Xiao Ling's, permanently unable to grow. As a result, although Xiao Jin seemed like a young boy, he was already as mature as an adult. However, no matter how mature he was, Xiao Ling always treated him as her young brother, pulling him everywhere. At the same time, a young man sat in the forbidden grounds of the City Lord's estate, cultivating there. Dense origin energy circulated around him, and a tremendous pressure would radiate from him from time to time. The young man was the white tiger in human form. Unlike Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, he worked extremely arduously on his cultivation. He did not spend a single moment on pointless things. He basically spent his entire time cultivating, apart from spending some time with his mother. He would not pause unless something major occurred. At this moment, the white tiger's eyes snapped open. At the moment he did that, the space before him shattered, being reduced to void. Just his gaze alone had surpassed the limits of the space in his surroundings. Compared to the past, his strength had clearly increased. The young island master of Three Saint Island is actually my elder brother's son. I need to go congratulate him now that this has been announced, the white tiger murmured. He soon vanished. Tai Ta currently sat on the throne in the War God Hall. He radiated with a dense, golden light. The light permeated the entire Divine Hall as if it had fused with the golden Divine Hall. Over 20 Saint Emperor Hall elders sat below the throne. Every single one had their eyes closed. They were also cultivating, absorbing a tiny portion of the golden light from Tai Ta. Suddenly, Tai Ta's eyes snapped open. The dense, golden light around him gradually dispersed as well before vanishing completely. The entire Divine Hall returned to its previous state. The hall elders beneath the throne all stopped cultivating at the same time. They opened their eyes and looked at Tai Ta politely. Prepare rich gifts. I'm going to the Chongyang clan. Tai Ta chuckled aloud and stood up, passing down orders. Yes, sir. I'll go prepare them immediately. A hall elder immediately replied and left politely. Chapter 1652. Gathering of the Strongest One. At the same time, the sea goddess, Yang Lai, Gue Hai Yi Dao, Feng Shaotian, Houston, and the four brothers all hurried over as well, gathering at the Chongyang clan. They all congratulated Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen did not plan anything special to celebrate, announcing Shangguan Aojian's identity as Jian Chen's son was akin to returning to the ancestral home according to the customs on the Tian-Yuan continent. Even ordinary people would celebrate something like that, not to mention that this had happened with Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er, two sovereigns of the world. As a result, many ancestors from large clans and organizations came without invitations from across the world with rich gifts. Even the patriarch of the Tianqin clan, Qin Shao, matriarch of the Tianmu clan, Tianmu Ling, king of the Qin Huang kingdom, Qin Ji, Quan Yu Kai, Kara Li Wei, the president and the grand elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union had come. Many people who were acquainted with Jian Chen had all come. In the end, Chongyang Ba and Bai Yun Tian could only decline Jian Chen's request of not celebrating the matter. They ordered a large banquet to welcome the guests. Everyone dispersed after the celebrations, but the four brothers remained. Jian Chen knew what the four brothers were looking for. After greeting them, he took them out of the Chongyang clan and directly led them to the center of a desolate mountain range. There were a few magical beasts living in the mountains, but they were not particularly powerful. The strongest was only at the 6th class, so the powerful presence that the four brothers unconsciously radiated immediately scared these magical beasts away when they arrived. Jian Chen extended his right hand and a finger-sized tower suddenly appeared. Sword slashes covered the tower and each slash shone brightly. It formed a powerful sealing force, keeping the two sealed. This tower was the treasure from a higher world that Jian Chen had found in the Sea of Despair, the Anata Grand Prime's Anata Tower. The four brothers immediately stared at the tower when it appeared. They were interested as well as confused. This was because the four of them felt a sense of familiarity and unfamiliarity from the tower. The reason why you've come to find me is probably because of this tower, right? Jian Chen stared at the four brothers and said calmly. The four brothers said nothing. Their attention was completely devoted to the Anata Tower. They were drawn in by it. With a single movement from Jian Chen, the Anata Tower in his hand was thrown into the air. Then, under Jian Chen's control, the tower rapidly expanded in the air, becoming something several thousand meters wide, reaching into the clouds in the blink of an eye. Boom! The Anata Tower struck the ground heavily after expanding. With a heavy rumble, the entire ground shook. The tower's weight immediately took over after leaving Jian Chen's hand, and it rapidly sunk into the ground. Jian Chen shook his head rather helplessly as he watched the Anata Tower sink a few dozen meters into the ground. He had not fully refined the Anata Tower yet, so it was a problem every time he placed it down. The tower was as light as a feather in his hand, but all of its weight would come crashing down once it left his hand. As a result, he needed to expand the tower. The bigger it was, the better, as a greater surface area could support the tower's weight. Otherwise, the tower might end up falling to the core of the planet if it remained as the size of a finger. Come in with me. Jian Chen waved at the four brothers before flying through the damaged door of the tower. The four brothers glanced at the damaged tower that reached into the clouds in shock before flying in with Jian Chen. There were a total of 9 floors in the Anata Tower. Parts of all 9 floors had shattered, with huge strands of sword qi hovering at the edges of the 4 different directions, suppressing the floor. Jian Chen took the 4 brothers to the sword qi in the east of the first floor. He stared at the huge sword qi and said, "You should be drawn towards the Anata Tower. The reason all lies with these sword qi. The master of these sword qi is called the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, a supreme expert who has reached the very apex of another world. I do not know where your cultivation method comes from, but it's definitely related to the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. He might have even created it." However, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt left behind all the sword qi inside and outside the Anata Tower, so they share the same origins as you. And maybe because of this, you are drawn towards here. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt has a total of 4 divine swords, which are the Sword of Mortality, Sword of Reincarnation, Sword of Slaughter, and Sword of Severance. The 4 swords just happen to share some physical features of the swords in your hands. The reason why you could all break through to the origin realm during the battle should be connected to the sword qi the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt left behind. When I subdued this tower previously, 4 strands of sword qi assisted me. They were hidden in my hand, and during your battle against the crisis of the world, the 4 sword qi flew out of my hand out of their own will. They fused with you, which is why the 4 of you could break through together at that time. Jian Chen explained to the 4 brothers. Jian Chen, is the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt a person of a higher world? Ada asked. Jian Chen nodded. Yes, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt is a person from a higher world, but he does not belong to the saints' world. Instead, he is from the immortals' world, a world which opposes the saints' world, as well as the greatest expert of the immortals' world. His strength is beyond our imagination. Jian Chen sighed at the sky when he reached this point and said regretfully, "Unfortunately, his glory has become a matter of the past because he has fallen long ago. He died on the battlefield between the 2 worlds." Hearing that the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was already dead, the 4 brothers' feelings became mixed. They had learnt the origins of their cultivation method, but the original progenitor was unfortunately already dead. What you see right now is the sword qi from the Sword of Severance. If you look at your sword, it's rather similar to the Sword of Severance. I want to see if you can form a connection with the sword qi. If you can absorb the sword qi, it would be even better. Jian Chen stared at Ada in interest as he became slightly eager. Aside from answering the 4 brothers' questions, he had brought the 4 of them into the Anata Tower for this reason. He wanted to see if he could make the 4 of them remove the sword qi. All these sword qi were sealed, sealing up the Anata Tower's power. If the seals were not removed, he would be unable to display the Anata Tower's full strength even if he refined it completely. Ada stared at the sword qi for a while before shaking his head. I find these sword qi both familiar and unfamiliar. Absorbing them is completely impossible because I can clearly feel their strength. Even with me just standing here right now, my heart still beats in fear. If I try to absorb it, I'll be ripped to shreds in a single moment, and I'll die. Jian Chen became disappointed, but he did not become dejected. He brought the 4 of them to the second sword qi. The second sword qi was left behind by the Sword of Slaughter, corresponding to Er's sword. However, it was no different from Ada. Also sensed some familiarity from the sword qi, but he was still unable to absorb the sword qi. Jian Chen took the 4 brothers to all 4 corners of the first floor, but they found nothing in the end. He directly took them to the 9th floor and visited the 4 sword qi there as well before leaving in disappointment. They exited the Anata Tower. Then what about the sword qi outside? Can you control it or absorb it? Jian Chen stood outside and stared at the sword slashes on the tower. Even though he already knew the outcome, he still wanted to try it. The 4 brothers stared at the sword qi and closed their eyes very soon. Their presences changed abruptly at that moment as well. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. Currently, he could sense that the 4 brothers seemed to have fused with the sword qi. They're borrowing the sword slashes to comprehend the way of the sword. A thought crossed Jian Chen's head. The same thing had happened with him when he first saw the sword slashes, but he had failed since his realm of comprehension was just too low. Not only did he fail to benefit at all, he had almost suffered an intense backlash. The cultivation method of the 4 brothers should be left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. They share the same origins as the sword qi. I wonder if they can comprehend it successfully, Jian Chen thought. However, Just when he thought of something like that, the four brothers' presence immediately became a mess. They all vomited blood and became extremely pale. Jian Chen arrived before the four of them. Raising his hand, he used Radiant Saint Force to heal them. The four of them had suffered from a backlash. Fortunately, they were not too heavily injured. With his abilities as a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master, they made a full recovery before long. What powerful sword chi! I've never sensed such powerful sword chi. I never thought that I wouldn't even have the right to comprehend it after reaching the origin realm. Ada sighed deeply as he glanced at the sword slashes with lingering fear. However, he immediately looked away again, no longer willing to try comprehend it anymore. Jian Chen stared at the sword slashes. He did not tell them that the sword chi had actually become much weaker than before after conflicting with the Anata Tower for so long. Afterwards, the four of them walked around the tower a few times. The four brothers had also flown to the very top of the tower. They saw the four slashes which were missing sword chi, but they did not benefit from anything at all in the end. Jian Chen, you've already answered our queries. If there is anything the four of us can assist you with in the future, please let us know. We will do everything we can as long as it's within our abilities. Farewell. The four brothers clasped their hands at Jian Chen and left together. Chapter 1653. Gathering of the Strongest. 2. Jian Chen watched the four brothers leave. When they finally left his sight, he sighed gently. There was a hint of pity and disappointment on his face. Aside from answering the questions that the four brothers had, he had another intention. He wanted to let the four of them enter the Anata Tower. He wanted to see if the four of them could somehow remove the seal on the Anata Tower. After all, the cultivation methods of the four brothers were related to the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, and they had only managed to reach the origin realm through the assistance of the four strands of sword chi. In this world, the four of them were the only people who were related to the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, so Jian Chen believed that the four of them would have the greatest possibility in removing the seal on the tower. Although the seal on the tower had become far weaker after so many years, it was still a seal left behind by the greatest expert of the Immortals world. Even after it had weakened, it would not be something that Jian Chen could remove. He would still remain helpless against the seal even if his strength progressed by a few more layers. Jian Chen looked at the damaged tower and stared at the sword slashes. He murmured, "These sword chi have already developed some intelligence. They must have sensed the brothers' arrival. Maybe they didn't react because the four brothers were too weak. After all, they still haven't comprehended the way of the sword. If the four brothers comprehend the way of the sword and come here after their strength has progressed by quite a few cultivation realms, will the outcome be different?" Jian Chen pondered as he stared at the sword slashes on the tower. After a while of thought, he put the Anata Tower away. With a single movement, he disappeared from the location as well, leaving behind only a huge pit the Anata Tower created. Jian Chen passed the next few years peacefully and simply. He either spent his time by his parents' side or guided Shangguan Aojian through cultivation. He also passed on all the experiences he had gathered across the years to Shangguan Aojian. Sometimes, he would stay on Three Saint Island for some time, accompanying Shangguan Mu'er. He would also visit Longevity Valley from time to time, following Uncle Xiao into the fields to do some farming in coarse clothes and bare feet, living an ordinary person's life. He would also visit various places to see acquaintances and friends. This period of time was the easiest and most pleasing time in Jian Chen's life. There was no longer any need for him to be like before, devoting himself to cultivation every moment of the day while remaining wary against enemies, living under huge pressures, where he could potentially become eternally doomed from even the slightest carelessness. In the past, Jian Chen had never even considered such a simple and peaceful life. Now that he could finally spend his days as he wished after so much trouble, Jian Chen valued it extremely dearly. He valued every day, every minute, and every second of it. He would often smile, revealing a sense of being relaxed, which he had never shown before. Through the years, quite a few changes happened to his good friends and acquaintances. The third prince of the Qin Huang kingdom, Qin Ji, had become the king quite a few years ago, while Tianmu Ling had become the matriarch of the Tianmu clan as well. Qin Shao had become the patriarch of the Tianqin clan long ago, and he even had several grandchildren now. Under his lead, the Tianqin clan became the greatest clan in the Xueqi kingdom. It was so prestigious that even the royal family of the kingdom was not as great. Although there had not been many major changes with the Radiant Saint Master Union, the president announced his retirement a few days after Shangguan Aojian's identity was announced. The new president was Quan Yu Kai. The Grand Elder had retired as well. The two of them had become Class 8 Radiant Saint Masters in the artifact space several decades ago, so they now possessed lifespans of 6,000 years. In their remaining time, they planned on stepping down completely and living a hermit lifestyle, no longer interfering with the matters of the Union. Due to the lack of Saint King ancestors, the Tsar family that once controlled the City of God had completely declined now. Although their ancestor Tsar Kai-yun had become a Saint Emperor, she left the clan as well, no longer bothering with the matters relating to the clan. She had faded away from the Tianyuan continent. Changyang, who remained in the Pure Heart Pavilion to cultivate the entire time. Due to the personal guidance of Feng Xiaotian, he seemed to have severed his emotions and desires completely. He had abandoned kinship and friendship. He had never taken a single step away from the Pure Heart Pavilion after entering it, and he did not even visit his mother who was growing weak across the years. Meanwhile, Newbies was probably the happiest one out of everyone. He spent his time traveling around with two women, moving through the territories of all four races. Sometimes, he would find a cave and go at it with the two women. The two women were both Class 7 magical beasts who had assumed human forms. They were burly, broad-shouldered, and powerful, even greater than many of the large men on the Tianyuan continent. Xiao Tianyu, Du Gufeng, Yun Zhang, Senior N, Sands, and so on basically spent all their time in Flame City, devoting themselves to the development of the Flame Mercenaries. A year after Shangguan Aojian's identity was revealed, Yu Yu and Huang Wan both emerged from seclusion. Their feelings became extremely mixed when they saw Shangguan Aojian. In the blink of an eye, the 10 years that Jian Chen and the Spirit King had agreed on arrived quietly. As soon as it was time, an extremely powerful presence began to radiate from the tunnel connecting the two worlds. A simple-looking middle-aged man appeared. Behind him was a metal sword that hovered with a dark glow. It radiated with soaring sword chi. The sword chi was so powerful that it made space distort. If it were not for the fact that the sword chi was purposefully hidden, it would have been enough to annihilate most of the space in the world. This middle-aged man was the Spirit King. He had punctually appeared on the Tianyuan continent. Behind him were the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. Shen Jian, please come to the City Lord's estate in Flame City. Jian Chen's voice rang out from 1,000,000 kilometers away as soon as the Spirit King appeared. It crossed the distance and boomed thunderously at the location of the tunnel between the two worlds. The Spirit King's face did not change, nor did he say anything. He directly took a step and with that, he vanished. At the next moment, he had crossed the distance, appearing in the City Lord's estate as if he had teleported. He stood before Jian Chen. Between the two of them was a long discussion table. All the Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent's world had already been seated and had been waiting for some time already. The Spirit King observed the composed Jian Chen closely. After staring for a while he said, "Your strength has increased again?" Jian Chen smiled. "There was some increase during my period of secluded cultivation." The Spirit King sat down and became rather stern. Jian Chen's strength before was roughly the same as his. Now that his strength had increased once again during his secluded cultivation, would that mean that the difference between the two of them had shrunken again? Or maybe they were completely on the same level now. At the same time, the Spirit King was unable to sense just how much Jian Chen's strength had increased. However, he could tell from his battle prowess that Jian Chen might have completely exceeded him already. Chapter 1654. Unification. Even with his mental fortitude, the Spirit King could not help but gasp when he confirmed the matter. Jian Chen's growth rate had completely shocked him. In a lower world where origin energy was thin, advancing any further after breaking through to the origin realm would be extremely difficult. It would require several times more energy and time. In fact, the laws of the lower world even restrict people from reaching godhood. Due to Jian Chen's cultivation method, the Spirit King was previously unable to tell his exact cultivation level, but he could roughly feel that even if he had not reached peak reciprocity, he was not far from it. Any advance in strength at that level was almost impossible because the lower world rarely had the resources to support the cultivation of a reciprocity expert. Despite the limitations, Jian Chen had made quite some progress in just 2 decades. The Spirit King could not help but sigh in surprise from this fellow's speed and talent. As the Spirit King sat down, the other Origin Realm experts all arrived at the City Lord's estate as well. They all glanced at Jian Chen with reverence and various other complicated emotions before silently sitting beside the Spirit King. The Spirit King was not present in the negotiations before, so Xueqi had represented the world of Forsaken Saints as he had been the strongest present. Xueqi had decided everything, but now that the Spirit King was personally present, the protectors and elders who were great enough to be revered on the Tianyuan continent all shut up obediently. Let's talk about the matter of land. As mentioned in the previous negotiations, our world has already proposed the land we want, and its size is proportional to the territories between the four races. We want a quarter of the Tianyuan continent, Sea Realm, Beast God continent, and Wasteland continent. That way, the land we possess in this world will be the same as yours. What do you think? The Spirit King said calmly as he stared at Jian Chen with interest. He directly ignored the other Origin Realm experts who sat beside Jian Chen. Everyone understood that there would only be two people taking part in the negotiations this time. They would be Jian Che and the Spirit King. The other Origin Realm experts had no right to interfere. In a world where strength reigns supreme, the person who could hit harder would always be right. If this world did not have Jian Chen to rival the Spirit King, the problem of negotiations would not exist at all. Jian Chen shook his head gently in response to the Spirit King's words. Xin Jian, I won't agree to that. Then why don't you tell me what you're thinking? The Spirit King's face remained the same and he responded easily as if he had expected Jian Chen to put up a fight. The Spirit King added, in order to stop the crisis of the world, my world has made a huge sacrifice, paying a great price. If the matter of land cannot be settled peacefully through negotiations, I cannot guarantee you that our world will not resort to military action. The Spirit King's words contained a hint of threat. If the land they were offered did not satisfy them, the world of Forsaken Saints would go back to war. The expressions of many of the Origin Realm experts on Jian Chen's side changed slightly. Their world no longer feared a battle against the world of Forsaken Saints with their current strength, but it would be destructive if a battle did erupt. The Tianyuan continent, which had already cracked into 4 pieces, might be reduced to nothing. After all, the shockwaves of battles between Origin Realm experts were enough to cause a devastating effect on the world. In the past, Jian Chen and the Spirit King's battle in outer space had forcefully split the moon in half. Even now, when night descended, countless people would see the two halves of the shattered moon. None of them wished for the planet beneath their feet to become a second moon. On the other hand, the Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints felt prideful because of the Spirit King's awe. They even straightened their backs unconsciously. Due to the fear they felt toward Shangguan Mu'er, they did everything fearfully in the negotiations before, always at the end of their wits. All of them felt extreme indignation because of that. Now that the Spirit King was personally conducting the negotiations, they immediately regained their awe from before. The Spirit King's threat did not anger Jian Che at all because the current world of Forsaken Saints no longer possessed the strength to challenge the Tianyuan continent. Once battle erupted, the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely suffer defeat because his chaotic body had reached the 9th layer. Even with the crack in his chaotic Niden, which limited him to 80% of his power, just that was far greater than what he had been able to use with the 8th layer. Correct. Your world indeed played a vital role in averting the crisis of the world. If it weren't for your assistance, we would probably all be dead by now. When your cultivators offered up their lives, I promised them that I'd fulfill their final wish so that they can rest peacefully in the afterlife, Jian Chen said calmly. At the same time, a scroll appeared in his hand, which he spread out on the table. On it was all the territories across the 4 races. Jian Chen stared at the map for a while and said, if I directly give you a piece of land, it'll lead to the objection of many people who originally lived there. After all, their land is their roots as well as the ancestral homes of many people. It holds an extraordinary significance to them, even more important than their lives. They would rather die than leave. There have even been many clans, organizations, and countries that have banded together because of this. If you want to settle down in that land, they'll throw themselves at you without any fear for death. As a result, several billions of people in my world will lose their lives in battles to protect their homeland if I directly follow through with your suggestion. I definitely cannot allow that to happen. The Spirit King frowned and asked, then what do you plan on doing? Jian Chen knocked the table with a knuckle and said after some thought, I have indeed come up with an idea to deal with this problem, and that is to unite the 2 worlds, abandon the concept of territory and different races to formally become one. Uniting the two worlds, the Spirit King murmured softly. He was surprised. Jian Chen's proposal had completely exceeded his expectations. After all, they were people from two different worlds and worlds that had initially gone to war with each other. There would still be some hostility between the two worlds. In fact, the Tianyuan continent had even been shattered because of their conflict. Correct. Unification. Our world will not give you any land. If you want your own land, then use the corresponding wealth to exchange it with people. Although wealth is nothing in our eyes, there are still quite a lot of people who would be willing to sell their land in the world, Jian Chen said sternly. This was the only idea he could come up with that could fulfill the demands of the world of Forsaken Saints as well as maintain the interests of his own world. After all, in the mortal world, wealth could be described as universal. Buying land would obviously not be a problem, and through this method, the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely be able to obtain some land or even more than what they had initially planned on getting. The light in the Spirit King's eyes flickered. He found Jian Chen's suggestion to be rather enticing. Although it would mean that they would need to lose some things in order to get land, their world had existed for countless years and it followed a monarchy system. Just the amount of wealth paid as taxes was an astronomical figure, so the Sacred Spirit Hall had accumulated a huge amount of wealth long ago. Losing some of their resources would not affect them at all. At the same time, they could use those resources to buy land from the various people across the four races, so the final amount of land they could end up with would be far greater than what they could ever negotiate for, assuming the negotiations even went their way in the first place. Splitting up the land had a direct connection to the lives of several billion people, so the Spirit King understood that if he continued to insist on dividing up territories, it would be unlikely to proceed smoothly. Jian Chen would never make the decision to take the lives of several billion people. As a result, the unification of the two worlds, which would allow the world of Forsaken Saints to buy land, seemed to be the only valid method so far to both solve the problem of land and the lives of several billion people. Chapter 1655, A New Era, 1. The Spirit King sank into his thoughts over Jian Chen's suggestion of unifying the two worlds and gaining land through purchase, clearly weighing the advantages and disadvantages of the suggestion. He would discuss with the elders and protectors around him from time to time through communication techniques. For the moment, the city lord's estate became silent. No one spoke on Jian Chen's side. Jian Chen had already presented his exact idea. They only needed to wait for the world of Forsaken Saints' response on whether they agreed or not. This matter clearly was extremely important, enough to influence the world of Forsaken Saints far and wide. As a result, the Spirit King and the others dared not to be careless. They all seemed to be sitting there silently, but they had engaged in discussion long ago. Time passed silently until 4 entire hours had passed. Only then did the Spirit King respond. He said, "All right, I agree to it. Our worlds will be unified from now onwards, and we can buy any land in your world." The Origin Realm experts on Jian Chen's side all began to smile as if a heavy load had been lifted from their shoulders when they heard the Spirit King's response. The matter of land had weighed on their hearts for 2 decades, and they knew that as long as the matter was not properly settled, it was possible for war to break out between the two worlds. They did not fear it, but they did not wish to see it either. Now that the matter of land had reached a perfect conclusion, many of them let out a breath of relief. Jian Chen also smiled. He said sincerely, "I hope that our worlds can coexist peacefully in the future. Of course, I must remind you that we won't do anything if you buy land fairly, where how much you can obtain will depend on your abilities, but I do not wish to see you force people into selling. If that happens, we will interfere. There will be some conflicts between the unification of our worlds. If we don't manage it well, it might even erupt into war, and the shockwaves of the battle will be extremely destructive to the Tianyuan continent once Saint Emperors get involved. The Tianyuan continent has already shattered now, becoming extremely weak. It won't be able to endure much at all, so I'd advise some Origin Realm experts of both worlds to form an alliance to prevent this, so that they can specially manage this matter and prevent Saint Emperors from taking part in large-scale battles," Houston suggested. Jian Chen nodded slightly. "That's not a bad suggestion. I feel the need to form an alliance to prevent large wars between experts. After all, the Tianyuan continent will not just be our homeland in the future. It'll be yours as well. None of us would wish to see our homeland destroyed at our own hands in the end." "Okay, I agree," said the Spirit King. Afterwards, the two sides ironed out some details regarding the unification of the two worlds. They both considered that unification would not be an easy matter as they were people from two separate worlds. Hence, they set down many rules and restrictions to avoid large-scale conflict between the two worlds. At the same time, they formally established an alliance between the two worlds. The name of the alliance was the Tian Saints Alliance, taking from the name of the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. There was no alliance head, only alliance elders. Without any exceptions, the origin realm experts of the two worlds would take up those positions. The alliance only existed to prevent large-scale conflict between the cultivators of the two worlds and prevent the shockwaves of battle from destroying their homeland. The alliance would not interfere in anything else other. With the negotiations concluded, everyone dispersed. The details of the negotiations were announced as soon as possible. Very soon, everyone learned about the conclusion of the negotiations between the two worlds. Some people treated it like it was nothing, while others sank deep into their thoughts about the future developments of this world. At the same time, there were other people who began to weep in joy as they cheered jubilantly. They were the people who were prepared to guard their homeland, kingdom, ancestral home, or clan to the death. They originally planned to enter a battle to the death against the foreign world, to protect what belonged to them. However, when they learnt about the conclusion, they all became emotional. Many people began to cry uncontrollably. It's Sovereign Jian Chen. It's Sovereign Jian Chen who helped us. If it were not for Sovereign Jian Chen, who stood against our land being handed over, where we are standing now would probably already belong to the foreign world. On the other hand, all of us, people deeply attached to the land, would end up dead on the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints. Thank you, Sovereign Jian Chen. Thank you. Long live Sovereign Jian Chen. The other sovereigns of our world don't really care about our lives, but Sovereign Jian Chen does. He was the one who saved us. It was he who protected our ancestral land. Very soon, some people learned that the final changes in the decision to hand over land were completely due to Jian Chen. They immediately began to cheer Jian Chen's name gratefully. Jian Chen had protected their homes and their lives. At that moment, several billion people across the world silently remembered Jian Chen. There were even a few cities where people began to erect statues of Jian Chen. People would kneel before the statues every day, and there were even many families who hung up images of Jian Chen on their walls to worship. As the greatest sovereign in the world, he was supreme. However, he was not like the other sovereigns who paid no attention to the lives of those who lived at the bottom of society. He thought for them and spoke for them. He had protected their homes, their ancestral lands, and even their lives. On the other hand, Jian Chen appeared on Three Saint Island. He sat on a rock at the top of Three Saint Mountain. Shangguan Mu'er was sitting beside him, playing her zither. The music she created was beautiful and touching, enough to enchant people. Jian Chen would remain there for the next period of time to quietly overwatch the developments of uniting the two worlds and see if there would be anything he had not accounted for. The world of Forsaken Saints moved quickly once the negotiations concluded. The next day, a large number of sainthood experts emerged from the tunnel that connected the two worlds. They entered the Tian Yuan continent before dispersing in all directions, flying towards the territories of the four races. These people were all saint kings and saint emperors. They were the people the world of Forsaken Saints sent to buy land. They all possessed a large amount of wealth. Of course, since they came from the world of Forsaken Saints, they did not need to worry about being robbed even with so much treasure because there were origin realm experts from their world who watched over everything. Chapter 1656. A New Era 2. In quite a large bustling city, the lofty city lord laid back in the air as he watched a performance. Suddenly, a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance appeared before him and directly said, "I want to buy this city." The city lord leapt in fright with the sudden appearance of a person. He became stunned when he heard the person's words, and he only responded after quite a while with much uncertainty, "Are you from the world of Forsaken Saints?" The middle-aged man smiled and introduced himself. "I am Stark. I come from the world of Forsaken Saints, and I am a 6th heavenly layer Saint King." "What? SS Saint King?" The city lord scrambled to his feet and became rather pale. He was only a heaven saint master right now, but he was also the strongest expert in the city. Saint Kings were insurmountable existences in his eyes. "I want to buy this city. You can go sort it out with the people in the city. Whether it be money, battle skills, or cultivation methods, they're all things I can offer." I'll pay according to the territory size of each person. Of course, there'll be something in for it for you if you satisfy me as well, said Stark. But this city is the territory of the Luafei kingdom. How can I? The city lord said as he appeared to be troubled. He was rather reluctant to help the people from the foreign world. After all, he was a human, so how could he help a foreign race? However, the person standing before him was a saint king, so even though he was reluctant, he was not bold enough to directly show it. The Luafei kingdom you speak of only has a single saint ruler. If you end up contributing enough, I can ask the higher-ups to let you into the sacred grounds of our world of forsaken saints to cultivate. You'll definitely be able to become a saint ruler within a decade, said Stark. What? I can become a saint ruler within 10 years? Is that true? The city lord's eyes widened as he became emotional. He became a heaven saint master many years ago, but it would be almost impossible for him to reach sainthood in his lifetime with his limited talent. Sainthood was a fatal attraction to him. Of course. How precious do you think our sacred lands are? Making people reach saint ruler is only a simple matter, Stark guaranteed. All right, I agree. Senior, as long as I can become a saint ruler, I'll do whatever you ask me to. The city lord agreed excitedly. He had completely forgotten about any matter regarding the fact that they were of a different race now that the hope of reaching sainthood was presented before him. Very few people knew that there was an ancient clan of several tens of thousands of years old hidden within an ancient mountain range. Today, the ancient clan had received a special guest. This guest seemed like nothing special, but he managed to enter the clan silently, ignoring any and all defensive measures. The guest stood before the ancestor of the ancient clan and said emotionlessly, "You have an underlying illness that prevents you from reaching Saint Emperor for the rest of your life. I just happen to have the cure for it, and I can make you become a Saint Emperor in 100 years as well as give you the power to increase your clan by 10 Saint Kings. I can let you choose the 10 people, and I'll make them all become Saint Kings within a century. What you have to do is just move out of this mountain range. This mountain range will belong to us in the future." A light flickered through the eyes of the ancestor. He said with a gruff voice, "You're able to infiltrate here silently, and I can't tell what your strength is. If I'm right, you should be a Saint Emperor from the world of forsaken saints. Your conditions are indeed enticing. I might have already agreed if you were a human, but it's a pity that you aren't. It's impossible for you to get us to move out of here. Don't you have enemies? I'll be honest, but we're looking for a lot of land, and there'll be a lot of people who will benefit from us. They'll either obtain the cultivation methods or battle skills they want or have their strength increased dramatically with our assistance. I can't guarantee whether your enemies will become even more powerful," the foreign Saint Emperor said calmly. The face of the ancestor of the ancient clan changed, and his gaze began to waver. "I'll give you 3 days to consider it. I will be back after 3 days." Similar occurrences did not just happen on the Tianyuan continent. It occurred in the sea realm and with the magical beasts quite a lot as well. Not only did the people from the world of forsaken saints lay their hands on the cities of mortals, but they also targeted a few hermit or even ancient clans. They approached them through various ways and used various methods to tempt them for their land. The appearance of a saint-tier battle skill was enough for ancient clans to go to war with one another. The world of forsaken saints had such a great heritage that the saint-tier battle skills that were priceless in the eyes of the Tianyuan continent cultivators were nothing to them. As a result, on just the first day, many hermit clans chose to sell their land for a saint-tier battle skill, a saint-tier cultivation method, or the opportunity to become a saint king or even a saint emperor. They made this decision so that their clans could become even more glorious and greater. Their entire clans moved. At the same time, the people from the foreign world used money and other treasures to buy large quantities of land from mortals. They had even offered a few benefits to the kings of kingdoms, winning over the kingdoms themselves. As a result, the territories of entire kingdoms had basically become their backyard. Of course, the foreign people did not run amok on the land that they had bought. They only wanted territory so that they could provide their weaker clansmen with a better living environment. After all, the environment in the world of forsaken saints was just too horrible, completely unsuitable for mortal realm cultivators to inhabit. Countless people would die from natural disasters every day, so the other world seemed like heaven. Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er sat on the same rock on Three Saint Island. They were both observing everything unfolding in the world, whether it be on the Tianyuan continent, Beast God continent, Wasteland continent, or in the sea realm. It has only been the first day, and the foreign world has already obtained so much land. If this continues, they'll probably be able to buy more than half of the Tianyuan continent. Jian Chen, have you made any countermeasures in regards to this? Shangguan Mu'er looked at Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded. I have indeed made countermeasures. The world of Forsaken Saints will only be able to obtain a limited amount of our land through their various measures, because I've already secretly ordered many of the large clans and sects in this world to reject their offers of selling over their land. Jian Chen paused before continuing, and the Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints aren't stupid. They know that once they buy up more land than we can afford to sell, we'll end up rebounding with full force. They know when to stop. After all, we agreed to them buying our land not because of how powerful they are but because of their contributions to stopping the crisis of the world. They completely understand this. Chapter 1657. Tai Ta bids farewell. Not only were Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er observing the sainthood experts from the world of Forsaken Saints as they bought land recklessly, but the other Origin Realm experts in the world were also secretly watching over these experts from the foreign world as well. Their souls were expanded across the territories of the four races as they paid close attention to the foreign experts, preventing them from going overboard. Only Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling paid no attention to the entire matter, running around every day as they played. Even the white tiger, who had been cultivating like a madman, would expand his soul from time to time and observe everything outside. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints were also secretly observing the clansmen who had come to buy land. After all, every single one of them bore an extremely significant amount of wealth for purchasing land. Not only did they carry the money used in the world, but they also carried a large number of cultivation resources, cultivation methods, battle skills, and so on. The Sacred Spirit Hall had accumulated all of these treasures across the years. Even though it all amounted to only the tip of the iceberg of the Sacred Spirit Hall, it was still enough for Saint Emperors to go crazy over it. Hence, to ensure their safety and to make sure their treasures were not stolen, the Origin Realm experts watched over everything at all times. As long as the disparity in strength was not sufficiently wide, the Origin Realm experts of both worlds would be able to sense each other's souls. As they expanded their souls so often, the Origin Realm experts that belonged to the world of the Tianyuan continent would often come into contact with the extended souls of the Origin Realm experts, but nothing adverse happened. The reckless purchasing of land had caused quite a tremendous uproar in the world of the Tianyuan continent. They all offered large amounts of treasures and cultivation methods to purchase land, causing the value of Saint-tier battle skills and cultivation methods to plummet. Basically every ancient clan and organization with Saint Kings who agreed to move received a Saint-tier battle skill or a Saint-tier cultivation method. After all, Saint-tier battle skills were precious due to their shortage. Even many ancient clans that had existed for tens of thousand years did not possess one. With the entry of the world of Forsaken Saints, the influx of Saint-tier battle skills and cultivation methods immediately caused these items to lose their former value. The foreign world's use of wealth on mortals and cultivation resources when dealing with cultivators was truly an effective method of obtaining large plots of land. The resources they consumed through this trade would be utterly insignificant to the Sacred Spirit Hall that had existed for countless years. This consumption was insignificant because not only did the world of Forsaken Saints possess more Origin Realm experts than the Tianyuan continent's world, even their sainthood experts had exceeded Jian Chen's world in number. As a result, there were basically countless Saint-tier battle skills and cultivation methods. In the blink of an eye, the world of Forsaken Saints' large-scale purchasing of land had gone on for 3 whole years. Not only did the world of Forsaken Saints gain quite a large section of territory among the 4 races, the strength of Jian Chen's world had rapidly increased in those 3 years as well. The world of Forsaken Saints had brought with them many heavenly resources that had never appeared on the Tianyuan continent, as well as scrolls that contained the comprehension of the mysteries of the world, which would assist people in reaching sainthood. As a result, many heaven saint masters managed to reach saint ruler. However, the people who reached sainthood through the use of heavenly resources would never be able to advance any further in cultivation. Only the small portion of people who broke through using the scrolls of comprehension and their own hard work could progress further. These heavenly resources were not as perfect as the violet cloud peaches and possessed backlashes. Once someone reached sainthood through the use of these heavenly resources, their foundation would be wholly destroyed, restricting them to that cultivation level for the rest of their lives. However, there were still many peak heaven saint masters who chose to break through to sainthood with this destructive method as their talent limited them to the 6th cycle of heaven saint master. They would be reduced to a skeleton in 1,000 years' time at most if they did not make this choice. Forsaken saints rapidly entered the world through the tunnel during these 3 years, to the point where their population stretched into the hundreds of millions. These people were not powerful, mostly below Earth Saint Masters. Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters only represented a tiny portion of them. They settled down on the land the world of Forsaken Saints owned. They cultivated there, established families and businesses there, attempting to unite with the people of this world. With their existence, the world gained a new race, the Forsaken Saints. The people from the world of Forsaken Saints always called themselves Forsaken Saints. Many of them did not know where the name came from, let alone what it truly meant. After all, the name had been around for just too long, so long that even past spirit kings were unable to research the subject. It was like a brand, burnt deeply into the depths of their minds, such that they would always remember that they were Forsaken Saints. After moving to the Tian-Yuan continent's world, the first friends that the Forsaken Saints made were merchants. In the eyes of the merchants, there were no eternal enemies, only eternal profit. They saw the arrival of the foreign race as a great opportunity. So many of the merchants imported the local specialties of certain regions as well as what the Forsaken Saints lacked. They benefited tremendously. Merchants became the first friends of the Forsaken Saints as well as the most welcoming group. Of course, there would be a few cultivators who were journeying through the continents who would end up in some small-scale conflicts and fights against the Forsaken Saints. However, the upper echelon of the Tian-Yuan continent did not interfere with these matters. After all, every single expert had grown up in a sea of blood and corpses. This would only be training for them. A small fishing boat was anchored silently several dozen kilometers away from Three Saint Island, rising and falling with the waves. 2 young men of similar ages stood on the boat in coarse clothes. Their feet were bare and they were fishing. Beside them was a basket that contained several large fish squirming about. It would splash water on the 2 young men from time to time, soaking their clothes, but they did not seem to mind at all. They stared out at the sea as they conversed with great interest. "Father, what do you think we should eat tonight? Do you want to eat Mother's fish soup or roast fish?" "I like the taste of roast fish more," one of the young men said with a smile. He seemed content. "Your mother's fish soup isn't bad. Your second aunt's fried fish is pretty good as well, while your third aunt's roasted fish is delicious. Why don't we try them all tonight?" "We've caught so many fish anyway," said the other young man. To no surprise, there were 2 swords on his back, one azure and one violet. The 2 of them were Jian Chen and Shangguan Aojian. At this moment, the space next to Jian Chen rippled, and a burly man suddenly appeared by his side as if he had teleported. The burly man's skin was lustrous as if he was plated in gold. He wore an attire for battle with a cape, making him seem dignified. He naturally radiated with an aura of supremacy. The most eye-catching part was the golden imprint of an axe between his eyebrows. "Tai Ta, you've come at a perfect time. Why don't you come back to Three Saint Island with me to try the fish? It must have been several decades since you've tried something like that." "It'll be nostalgic," Jian Chen said to the burly man who had suddenly appeared. Tai Ta looked at the fishing duo, and his gaze became mixed with feelings. There was a strong sense of a reluctance to part with them. After a moment of silence, he sat down beside Jian Chen and stared off into the sea. He said, "Jian Chen, I've come this time to bid farewell to you. I am leaving." Jian Chen's grip on his fishing rod immediately tightened when he heard that. He only responded after some silence, "Have you really thought it through? Once you leave, it won't be very easy for you to return. Who knows how long you'll have to wait for. Senior Adriana has already made all the preparations. She is urging me to go to the higher world. I've already thought it through. I will leave soon because I don't want to stay here either." "There's no point in staying here anymore," Tai Ta said rather gloomily. Jian Chen glanced at Tai Ta deeply before sighing. He knew part of Tai Ta's reason. Originally, Tai Ta had been engaged to a woman in the tiny village he had grown up in on the Tian-Yuan continent. However, the woman had been married off to another man in the village many years ago, and she had become a grandmother now. Tai Ta's heart had always ached because of this matter. Tai Ta had always kept this matter hidden and did not tell anyone. However, with Jian Chen's tremendous strength now, his soul could easily envelop the entire world. If he was willing, he could make anything happen in the world. So what happened in Tai Ta's village obviously could not be kept a secret from him. Jian Chen patted Tai Ta's shoulder. You have to protect yourself once you go to the saint's world. We might meet there before long. Jian Chen did not try to persuade Tai Ta to stay. He knew that Tai Ta would depart sooner or later. Tai Ta looked at Jian Chen and said, Jian Chen, come to the saint's world with me. Senior Adriana has told me that I'd become the ruler in the eyes of everyone once I return to the God clan. Everyone will respect me and listen to my commands. The God clan is a glorious clan in the world of forsaken saints. They're very powerful, so if you go to the saint's world with me, you'll be able to remain in the clan to cultivate. With my status in the God clan, no one will be able to make any trouble for you. Shangguan Aojian was immediately displeased when he heard Tai Ta's words. He grumbled, Uncle Tai Ta, I won't stop you if you want to go to the saint's world, but don't entice my father, or I'll never forgive you. Tai Ta looked at Shangguan Aojian, and his gaze became gentle. He smiled without minding too much. Your father is going to leave sooner or later, and it won't just be your father, but your mother as well, because it'll be almost impossible for their strength to progress if they remain here. Chapter 1658. Doubts about Jian Chen's identity. Humph. Shangguan Aojian snorted gently and turned around, no longer paying any more attention to Tai Ta. He knew that his parents would leave this world sooner or later, and that day was approaching. Tai Ta, there are still a lot of things tying me down here. I want to stay a little longer in this world so that I can spend some more time with my parents before I leave. After all, who knows how long I'll be gone for? I don't even know if I'll be able to see the two of them when I do come back, Jian Chen said with a rather heavy heart, because he had no idea whether he could return after going to the saint's world. He was not afraid of dying. However, he was still tied down. Even if he had to go, he could not leave in such a hurry. Okay, I'll wait for you in the saint's world. Directly go to the God Swirl Plain as soon as you get to the saint's world. I have no idea where the God Swirl Plain is. I just heard it from Senior Adriana. Senior Adriana told me that our God clan is located on the God Swirl Plain, and as long as you make it there, you can find where the God clan is by asking anyone, Tai Ta said sincerely. All right, I'll come looking for you on the God Swirl Plain if I get the chance. Jian Chen paused with that and became stern. But Tai Ta, I hope you can promise me something. Please do not tell anyone in the God clan about me. The more powerful they are and the more authority they possess, the more you cannot speak of me. Okay. Why? Tai Ta asked in confusion. Jian Chen paused for a short moment before responding. Don't ask me now. Anyway, just don't mention my existence randomly in the God clan. Please do not mention the 2 swords I possess to the upper echelon of your God clan in particular. And it's best if you keep it a secret from people who aren't a part of the God clan as well. You'll learn the reason in the future. Tai Ta understood the significance of the matter when he saw Jian Chen's seriousness. He immediately nodded solemnly and guaranteed. Okay, I agree. I won't speak of it randomly. I don't know the reason, but I believe you because you are my best brother. Jian Chen sighed gently and pulled back his rod. He pulled out a 60 centimeters in length fish out of the water. Jian Chen removed the fish from the hook before throwing it into the basket, and Ming Dong. Ming Dong was sent to the Saint's World several years ago. With his strength back then, it definitely would have been challenging for him to survive in the Saint's World. His life will be in danger if he shows any carelessness at all. It has been so many years, and I wonder how he has been. I worry about him the most. Tai Ta, since you have the God Clan in the Saint's World, I hope you can look for him using the God Clan once you go to the Saint's World if you can. Jian Chen became worried when he mentioned Ming Dong. However, he still had some hope that Ming Dong had not been stranded in some place and the Anata Grand Prime's organization had protected him instead. After all, Ming Dong had been sent away by one of the Anata Grand Prime's treasures, the Fortune Jade Pedestal, in the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. The matter would surely involve the Anata Grand Prime. It might have even been a way for the Anata Grand Prime to choose a successor. If that were the case, Ming Dong's safety would have been guaranteed, but if it were not, it would be a horrible situation for Ming Dong to be stranded in a higher world. Don't worry. The matter has always been weighing on my mind. Ming Dong is also my friend, so I'll immediately get people to look for Ming Dong once I get back to the God Clan. Tai Ta slapped his chest and guaranteed. Tai Ta and Jian Chen spoke for a very long time, only leaving when they knew it had become late. This was because both of them understood that this would be the last time they met in this world. Next time, They would see each other in the saints' world. With Tai Ta's departure, Jian Chen and Shangguan Aojian returned to Three Saint Island. Jian Chen's heart felt rather heavy. First, Ming Dong had been sucked away. Then his sister was taken away without him even getting the chance to bid farewell. Now, Tai Ta was about to leave as well. He would lose one more close friend. Aside from this, what bothered Jian Chen the most was the identities of Tai Ta and himself. He was a successor of the Immortals world, a disciple of the sword sect of Violet Heavens. This was an unshakable fact. Ever since he cultivated the Azulate Sword's law, ever since he cultivated the chaotic body, ever since the sword spirits took him as his master, his identity had changed. Meanwhile, Tai Ta was a part of the God clan from the Saints' world. The Saints' world and Immortals' world were hostile towards one another, so he really did not know whether his relationship with Tai Ta would remain the same once his identity was revealed. Aside from Tai Ta, there was also his sister Chongyang Mingyue who worried for him and protected him since their youth. Jian Chen felt that a huge boulder was weighing on his heart when he thought of these matters. He felt nervous from how suffocating it felt. Internally, he was even slightly afraid of facing all this. In the War God Hall, Tai Ta sat on the throne boldly. His face was calm, but his eyes shone coldly and vigorously. He seemed dignified. The current him was no longer the country bumpkin who was just born yesterday. Tai Ta had truly matured in the past few decades, whether it be his temperament or personality. Jian Chen asked me to keep the matters about him a secret from the upper echelon of the God clan, in particular, his two swords. I can't even mention it to outsiders. Why did he ask for something like that? Is there a secret that needs to be hidden? Tai Ta thought about what Jian Chen had told him and became curious. Jian Chen doesn't want me to reveal this to other people. That means that it'll threaten his life if I do. Jian Chen is my best friend, and I won't allow anyone to harm him, even if it's the upper echelon of the God clan, Tai Ta murmured gently. Towards the end, his bright eyes shone with two rays of light. But if I want to protect Jian Chen, I have to know what he's fearing and deal with the source of the problem. But from Jian Chen's words, everything seems to be related to the two swords. After a moment of silence, Tai Ta stood up. He took a step and suddenly vanished from the divine hall. The elven god tree reached into the clouds within the forbidden ground of the elves. It radiated with a tremendous presence of life. The forbidden grounds were quiet, without anyone to be seen. Only the elven queen had the right to enter and leave as she pleased. Even the elven elders could not set foot in here so easily. At this moment, there was suddenly a flash of golden light. A figure had appeared silently before the elven god tree. He was several meters tall and extremely burly, while his skin was golden. He wore a cape and naturally radiated with a sense of supremacy. Adriana greets the war god. Before the elven god tree, an illusionary woman appeared. She bowed towards Tai Ta, who had suddenly appeared. Adriana, I want to ask you if you recognize the two swords used by my brother Jian Chen, Tai Ta questioned. After a moment of hesitation, she shook her head and said, War God, I do not recognize the two swords. However, the two swords are violet and azure and their sword chi are unique. They do resemble a set of legendary treasures. What treasures? Tai Ta's eyes narrowed, and he continued his questioning. He already realized that he might be able to find out what Jian Chen feared from Adriana. Adriana recalled the past and said, They're supreme treasures of the Immortals world, the Azulate swords, also known as the twin swords of Yin and Yang. They are one of the 10 great god artifacts of the Immortals world. They are the sect treasures of the sword sect of Violet Heavens, the chief sect of the 9 great sects in the Immortals world. It's said that the founding ancestor of the sect, Violet Heavens Immortal Exalt, personally forged the two swords. The Violet Heavens Immortal Exalt is a peak expert from the Immortals world, one of their 5 grand exalts. Adriana's expression suddenly became rather complicated, and she said hesitantly, Except that we're enemies with the Immortals world. If Jian Chen's swords are the twin swords, then, if they are, then what? Tai Ta asked in a deep voice. If they are, Jian Chen definitely won't be able to keep them. But that's given that he doesn't have any ties to the Immortals world. If he does, he'll become the public enemy of the Saints' world and might even be hunted down by several Grand Primes. It's just that right now, Jian Chen's swords only resemble the twin swords from the Immortals world. After all, Their difference in power is just too extravagant, replied Adriana. Chapter 1659. Tai Ta's departure. Tai Ta fell silent. He did not delve into the matter of the immortal's world. Right now, all he was thinking about was Jian Chen. Everything that Jian Chen had said to him earlier and his stern expression clearly appeared in his head. If Tai Ta were the same country bumpkin from several decades ago, he would have never thought so much. However, he had truly matured after he became the war god of the 100 races and reached the origin realm. After learning all this from Adriana and connecting it to what Jian Chen had told him before, he was basically certain that Jian Chen was related to the immortal's world. He did not know whether Jian Chen's swords were the azulate swords from the immortal's world, but he knew there was a connection between the two. A while later, Tai Ta suddenly stared at Adriana sternly and said with a heavy voice, "Adriana, Jian Chen is my best brother. It doesn't matter whether he has any connections to the immortal's world, but you cannot reveal anything regarding him, especially in regards to his 2 swords. Even if the upper echelon of the God clan asks you, you cannot speak of it. Do you understand?" Although Adriana was the greatest God King of the God clan, Tai Ta had basically directly ordered her right now. He seemed dignified and possessed an undefiable sense of power. "Yes, sir," Adriana replied politely. Not only was she completely fine with Tai Ta's words, but she also behaved like the situation was natural. As a member of the God clan, Adriana deeply understood just how revered the war god was in the God clan. Even though the current war god was still very weak and had not fully matured, even hall elders or great elders in the God clan who basically led the entire clan would not dare to disobey the war god's will. This was because the war god was the soul of the entire God clan. He was their belief and their pillar of support. Only when the war god was present was their God clan truly the God clan. "I want you to swear." Tai Ta still did not find it enough as this matter was directly related to the life of his best brother. He could not afford any mistakes. "I, Adriana, swear." A month later, the elven god tree that had remained rooted in the forbidden grounds of the elves for millions of years vanished. Meanwhile, a vast swathe of kneeling people had already gathered. They extended from the top of the mountain to the base. From afar, it even seemed like the entire mountain had donned armor, made from countless 100 races cultivators. That was not all. There were also countless cultivators of the 100 races who knelt on the land around the mountain. They reached into the hundreds of millions. It was such a grand view that it was enough to shock anyone and everyone. This was because today was the day the war god would leave this world and venture into an entirely new one. Everyone from the 100 races would gather here to send off the war god as long as they could. Across the wasteland continent, there were even more members of the 100 races who could not make it due to their strength and the distance, or there would have been even more people gathered here. The golden divine hall at the top of War God Mountain that everyone knelt towards suddenly began to shine with a dazzling golden light. The light was so bright that it outshone the sun, replacing it as the only source of light in the world. It illuminated the wasteland continent one last time. The War God Hall slowly rose up from War God Mountain, climbing higher and higher and faster. In the end, it turned into a streak of golden light, shooting into outer space at an extraordinary speed. At the same time, a considerable swirl gradually formed in outer space, slowly transforming into the gate to the Saints' world. The War God Hall that had become a golden streak of light rapidly approached the gate. At that moment, the War God Hall gained worldwide attention. Regardless of the humans, the sea race, magical beasts or even forsaken saints, countless cultivators all raised their heads to watch the War God Hall leave. They did not do this to see Tai Ta off, but to see the War God Hall enter the spatial tunnel. Many people revealed envious expressions because they knew that the Saints' world was a higher space. If Saint Emperors entered the Saints' world, it would become countless times easier to reach the origin realm. Hence, many Saint Emperors yearned for the Saints' world. Unfortunately, it was impossible to pass through the tunnel without the strength of the origin realm. Jian Chen sat on a rock and drank by himself gloomily on Three Saint Island. He watched the War God Hall approach the spatial tunnel and raised his glass for Tai Ta. He saw Tai Ta off from there, wishing that everything would go his friend's way in the Saints' world. War God, the Saints' world has a total of 49 Great Plains. The spatial tunnel's connection in the Saints' world is not fixed, so please leave everything to me. I'll control the direction in the spatial tunnel to prevent us from ending up on some remote plane. Adriana's voice rang out inside the War God Hall. Finally, under the gazes of countless people, the War God Hall arrived before the spatial tunnel. However, at this moment, an indescribably tremendous might erupted from the War God Hall. The pressure seemed to make it the supreme ruler of the universe, making the entire universe tremble. Even the laws of the world had almost shattered before it. At this moment, the War God Hall was surrounded in a green light that teemed with the presence of life. The moment the green light appeared, the world trembled and the celestial bodies dimmed. Countless stars darkened. The green light seemed to be enough to destroy the universe. With its appearance, the surrounding space was all reduced to darkness because the light was just too powerful. It was so great that it could destroy a massive planet in a single moment, completely exceeding what the space in this world could withstand. When a meteor 100 kilometers in diameter approached the green light, it was reduced to dust silently. The expressions of countless experts who witnessed this scene from the distant Tianyuan continent changed drastically. Their faces all became extremely pale because the very depths of their souls trembled before the pressure. The eyes of all the Origin Realm experts in the world narrowed. They were wholly fixated on the green light around the War God Hall as respect appeared in their gazes. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.